Good evening, Chair and members.
Good evening. How are you, Mandy?
Very well, thank you, Chairperson, and yourself?
I'm good.
Person, just to confirm, there are 7 members present. So
7
we
members?
are, yes.
Okay. Let me check my.
Good afternoon, Chairperson.
Afternoon, Mama. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm good, Mama.
Thank you, my Chairperson.
Hello, Chairperson.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good. I'm good.
Annalisa.
Hello, Ma. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good, Mama. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you, and you too.
Good morning. Good evening, honorable members. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Chair.
We're now going to start with our meeting. I know that we are tired, but we need to soldier on. Our agenda has been flagged there. And the agenda items are the chairperson's opening remarks, and then the opening remarks by the Minister of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, then followed by the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, Lead Department Overview of Phase 1 Leadership Coordination and Accountability Implementation Program. And the first to present will be the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability, followed by the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, then followed by Department of Public Service and Administration, then the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, then Department of Employment and Labor, and the last department to present it will be the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies. Then the deliberations or discussions, and then the item about the 27th of August 2021, which is Women's Parliament. We'll get the briefing. I think Honorable Lucas will be there to brief the steering committee. Then the outstanding committee businesses, adoption of 4 June 2021 minutes, draft minutes, then the closing remarks, then we adjourn the meeting. Can I get one to move for the adoption of the agenda? Is there any hand?
Yes, Chair, Ms. Sharif.
Okay.
Yes, I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you very much. The agenda has been moved. Any seconder?
Yes, Mahleng was seconded.
Thank you very much, Matlengwa, for seconding the move of the agenda. Honorable members, we are going to use this agenda for this evening's meeting. The National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide has allocated certain lead roles to various stakeholders.
Recording in progress.
Pillars. Pillar 1 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide allocate lead roles to the following stakeholders: the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, Department of Public Service and Administration, Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, National Council of Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, the National Parliament, Department of Employment and Labor, Department of Communication and Digital Technologies. Today, the above-mentioned department will present on progress in relation to NSP Pillar 1. With regards to the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability will give an update about its establishment. With regards to the National Parliament, Parliament is tasked by the NSP to establish a parliamentary oversight committee for the NSP. This idea was welcomed by the Steering Committee of Multi-Party Women Caucus until Parliament decided to adopt a GBV framework. Earlier this year, Parliament drafted a gender-based violence and femicide framework, and represented political parties were requested to make inputs, after which the framework was adopted. The aim of the Parliament GBVF framework is not to establish a separate committee to oversight over NSP, but to provide a coordinated approach for Parliament in addressing gender-based violence and femicide. The coordinated approach adopted compels various Parliament committees to ensure that the National Strategic Plan is implemented. These committees are expected to schedule meetings by focus areas according to the NSP pillars and report both quarterly and biannually. The Multi-Party Women Caucus is one of the parliamentary committees that is expected to ensure implementation of various pillars of the NSP and report quarterly as required. Today's session is then about overseeing the implementation of the NSP in compliance to the parliamentary GBVF framework, as well as oversight over the implementation of the NSP. With these words, I would like to welcome all members of the steering committee, the minister present here, and deputy ministers, and the department, and everyone else who is in our midst. You are welcome. Now I will hand over to the Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. Mama Ide, over to you to give the opening remarks or the political input. Thank you.
Good evening to all honorable members and senior officials present in the room. Thank you very much for the invitation to engage on the implementation progress for Pillar 1 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. This pillar is anchored on the principles of accountability, coordination, and leadership. This pillar is indeed the anchor of the National Strategic Plan as it set out to develop architecture at national, provincial, local levels that will facilitate a cohesive, coordinated, and grounded, as well as multi-sectoral response to gender-based violence and femicide sketch. In particular, Pillar 1 is set out to attain the following objectives: ensure accountability at the highest level, highest political level, and across all spheres of society through firm individual and collective leadership. Therefore, the Interministerial Committee on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide has remained cognizant of this lethal affront. Since the formation of the IMC last year, we have 6 meetings to discuss pertinent issues and find solutions to ensure that we are responding appropriately to this challenge. This demonstrated political will and anchored the provision of strategic guidance and political leadership. It is supposed by a technical, it is supported by a technical task team comprising key departments of the relevant ministries. We remain committed to build and bolster an architecture that is coordinated, agile, adequately resourced, and responsive to gender-based violence and femicide. Our focus is to develop an architecture at national, provincial, and local levels that will facilitate a cohesive, coordinated, grounded, and multi-sectoral response to gender-based violence and femicide. Administratively, we have strengthened accountability with the clusters of Director Generals in an effort to ensure that DGs are kept in the loop on the progress in terms of implementation of the NSP of the gender-based violence and femicide. Lastly, to identify the mechanisms and progress across state, private sector, media, religious leadership, traditional leadership, and civil society for accountability to being highly responsive to both response and prevent gender-based violence effectively. In the first year achievements, the department will take you through the achievements of this first year. The overall focus has been on institutionalization of the plan across government and building a firm institutional foundation to foster greater government-wide accountability for delivery on its implementation with the following achievements. Appropriate institutional mechanisms have been established at various levels, and they include the following activities: embedding the NSP of the gender-based violence and femicide through provincial and local engagements. Our focus during the year 2020 and this year has been on institutionalizing the national strategic plan within government. This is a necessary strategic intervention which lays the ground for the successful implementation of the national strategic plan. A great deal of work has been done in terms of localization of the NSP, of the GBVF, and department is driving the whole institutionalization process, as well as mobilization as a whole of government and society approach to gender-based violence and femicide. It is for this reason that COCTA is taking the lead and supported by the department in embedding the NSP within the district development model. This model has a heightened focus to reach even the most remote areas in the country. The department is working very closely with local civil society structures in realizing this objective. Implementation of pillar collaboratives have been established and functional. This collaboratives offers a multi-sectoral platform for engagement and joint intervention across the pillars. As you well know, South Africa continues to experience unacceptably high levels of gender-based violence and femicide. Over the past year, the COVID-19 pandemic added to this suffering with a heart-wrenching impact on individual women, children, and LGBTQIA+ communities. In most instances, the hyper-endemic gender-based violence and femicide levels masks all the efforts from government and various stakeholders to address this scourge. The presidency, in partnership with our office and the office of the DPME, have compiled the year one report of the implementation of the National Strategic Plan report. This is effective report which provide a review of efforts to address gender-based violence and femicide with the National Strategic Plan prioritized initiatives. A key achievement that has emerged over year one is that the promise of effectively mobilizing a government-wide response is starting to take shape, even in such a difficult time we are in. As part of accountability by government, on the 30th of this month, we are hosting the first Multi-Sectoral National Engagement Forum. The purpose is to share the year one effective report and provide space through which we can collectively reflect on the work done collectively. Without further ado, I would like to thank you, Chairperson, and all of the leadership in the room once again for this opportunity, and hand over the responsible official in my department, who's a DG, and he will decide who else, who will take through the Pillar 1 progress in detail. Chairperson, I also have to hastily say I was waiting for a 4 o'clock meeting, but I had already made commitment for 6 o'clock, but nevertheless, this is this is the highest important matter on our calendar. And if you see me disappearing, you must know that I have disappeared to the commitment I've made for 6 o'clock, but there was just no way I could not personally come as per your generous invitation to this, to say what is Pillar 1 of the NSP about. Okay.
Ikensessionani manuwa hina kuva mi ve kona na your opening remarks. Thank you very much. I'll now call upon the DG of the department to give us a briefing. I know that you might be having a long presentation, but considering also the issue of time and the departments that are going to present, I'll give you 10 minutes. But if you feel that you have that energy for squeezing up your presentation and make it lesser than 10 minutes, you can do that. Over to you, DG. Thanks.
Reperile, Chair, all the members. I will not present now. I will respond to the questions when there are questions. I'll ask DDG Shoki to present. DDG Shoki. Yes.
Good evening, multi-party Women's Caucus members, as well as the officials and minister present today. I'll quickly scan through the presentations. Let's move to the next slide. There's a 5-year, we do have 5-year outcomes that spans from 2020 to 24, and it's about bold leadership, strengthened accountability across government and society that responds to GBVF strategically with clear messaging and adequate technical and financial resources, but also strengthened multi-sectoral coordination and collaboration across different tiers of government and sections of society, and based on relationships of trust to effect the pillars of the NSP. Next slide. We can move to the next slide. In terms of coordination, structures, and accountability, over 2020 and 2021, the continued upsurge in GBVF has demanded a whole of society towards effective and urgent action to reduce and ultimately eradicate the GBV scourge. And in March 2020, Cabinet approved the NSP, and implementation coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, and GBVF was prioritized as a dual pandemic. President has been at the forefront, leading the national response to GBVF. We do have an IMC, as alluded to, and it serves to ensure integration of the strategy into government planning processes, as well as facilitating resourcing, and that yields concrete and tangible results. The process of establishing the council was halted until the bill that regulates the mandate and the operations of the council is put in place, and the draft legislation is currently undergoing cluster processes, particularly the cabinet cluster processes at this stage. On institutionalization, the first year of the NSP focused on this part of the work, included integration of NSP priorities in strategic plans, in annual performance plans of the departments. GBVF now is a standing agenda item at all FOSAT meetings, and Parliament developed the oversight framework to ensure political accountability for delivery. In February, the private sector also raised funds to the tune of 128 million, and the fund allows the principles enshrined in the NSP on GBVF of harnessing the roles and responsibilities and resources of all the stakeholders. 21 billion has been allocated over the MTF and pledged by the departments, and it seeks to implement the 6 pillars of the NSP. The process of localizing the NSP is in progress, and the department, as well as COCTA, we are collaborating together in ensuring that it is embedded in the district development model. Next slide. In building ownership in the absence of the council, the establishment of a voluntary multi-sectoral implementation collaborative is in place, and it involves participation of all key stakeholders that are responsible for implementing the NSP. The dynamic collaborative driven by the department with the support of UN Women has now grown. We started at 36 civil society organizations, we are now at 82, and it's approximately about plus minus 400 individuals that spans across civil society, labor, business, faith, and community, as well, faith, community, and researchers. The platform implements high-level rapid interventions and the FBO Collective Faith Action to End Gender-Based Violence has also been established, and it serves to transform faith communities into safe healing spaces. And in order to ensure that there are no delays in the implementation of the NSP, we have established a GBVF secretariat made up of a director, a deputy director, a responsible for M&E, and a deputy director on stakeholder coordination and administration officer appointed. Next slide. And we, as a collaborative, we have developed our website. This is the website page. Next slide. We have an Mne framework that has been drafted. The framework outlines the theory of change, the technical indicator definitions, data flow processes, roles and responsibilities, and it defines the requisite capacity for implementation. Consultation sessions are already underway. We've already consulted with national departments. We will be rolling it out to provinces and local. We have also developed a draft comprehensive national prevention strategy, and a multi-stakeholder consultation process commenced in July on this national prevention strategy. Next slide. This is a reflection of the rate of compliance by the departments. You can see those that are almost rated in the green, those that are rated in the amber, those that are rated in red, and we have reached out to those that are rated in red. We've been working with SALGA in terms of institutionalizing the NSP with local government. We've reached out to sports, arts, and culture. They've got a lot that they need to do working with us, particularly from social cohesion and nation building perspective. We will be incorporating issues of the Department of Transport because they were not initially incorporated in the NSP when it was crafted at that time, but we are working closely with them in terms of the work that we are doing around the taxi industry and the safety of women, and we've encouraged them to report in that regard. Next slide. I think I'm left with a slide or so. Okay, it looks like we have come to the end of our slides, and that's the work. Okay, on the reflections, to conclude, in some instances, there's non-alignment with national strategic planning outcomes, and it's operational in nature, the way they report. The pace of reporting on average at that time was about 10 departments are submitting consistently. You've seen the compliance sheet. Sometimes they're repetitive in nature in terms of their report, but we've made it a point that now that we are reporting monthly and no longer weekly, this is gradually shaping up, and the quality of the reports that is forthcoming is gradually improving. Next slide. Well, these are things that we have learned. I won't take you through as reflections, but members can read for themselves: high-level cohesive political leadership, and the things that we need to change, the capacity that we need to put in place to implement, resourcing at different levels, and communicating at all times and sharing progress in terms of the work that we are doing. Next slide. For year 2, we'll focus on consolidating and strengthening institutionalization, taking it to the higher level, finalize national prevention strategy, fast-track council bill, address systematic blockages and challenges that we are experiencing. I want to believe that this last one is, yes, that's the last one. The move from policy formulation and adoption to effective implementation represents one of the key challenges to address the vision of no GBVF to be a lived reality. We are fixing the plane as we fly it, and the role of the multi-party Women's Caucus is paramount in building accountability for effective delivery. We are in this together, and we will work with yourselves. Whatever issues and recommendations arising from this platform today, we will endeavor to implement as such. I thank you.
Thank you very much, DDG, for your presentation. Honorable members, I will take the next department. If we have something, just note them down. We'll speak on it on the item of the deliberations. For now, I will call upon the second department to present, which is the Department of Justice and Correctional Services. I've seen the Deputy Minister, Honorable Jeffrey. I don't know whether you're going to say something or you'll delegate.
Well, yeah, I'll because you've given us a good evening, Chairperson, and good evening, members of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus. there is a team from the department. It's people from different sections, but there's Advocate Praise Kambule, who will, I think, briefly run through the presentation. And then there's also officials from the Legislative Development section that I've seen on the platform, Henk de Prier, Ina Buerta, and Mac Mukulubete, who can speak more on the bills if there are questions on that. I don't know if I've missed anybody, but if I can hand it over to Advocate Kambula. Also, just to say that justice is more involved in Pillar 3 than on Pillar 1. But if I can hand over to Advocate Kambula. Thanks.
Thank you very much, DM. Advocate Kambule.
Thank you, DM, and thank you, Chair, and the members. This is our presentation at a glance, and those are the areas that we're going to be focusing on. As DM has said, that our major focus and major participation in the implementation of the NSP is on Pillar 3. Then if you can take me to the next slide. As you see there, that since we have the Presidential Summit Declaration, which actually it raises a call to every person living in South Africa to take responsibility, that is to support the cause of eradicating gender-based violence and femicide. So it says political, government, business, and community leadership. And then you have Article 2, and that Article 2, then it says that the political, government, business, and community leadership and the families must be held accountable for their actions, including the omissions. So what it means is that if you are passive, you are watching, you are a bystander, and you don't do anything, so you fall within a category that needs to be criminalized. It's something, it's an act that needs to be criminalized. So, but basically what it says is that, that is the Presidential Summit Declaration, is that every person living in South Africa must take the responsibility to stop GBVF and also be held accountable. If you can take me to the next slide. So this is the call that it actually makes. It says that then we need then to be the agents of change. We need to be the agents of change. That is the call that it is making. It is actually echoing as well, and the global campaign that is been made by UN, that we need to choose to challenge as women. So as women, we need to choose to challenge patriarchy, choose to challenge gender-based violence and femicide, choose to challenge gender inequality, because if we don't, it will not end. So this slide then it gives us the overview of all the pillars of the NSP. And of course, as you are seeing there, that justice is responsible for Pillar 3, and we have been taking the leadership in the multi-sectoral implementation of this pillar for in the previous financial year and also in this financial year. Take me to the next slide. So the relevant key interventions for the NSP, which are quite relevant to our mandate, it is about strengthening leadership and accountability across government and society, and also to ensure that that is the second intervention, that there's effective multi-sectoral coordination by the lead agency and collaboration across the different tiers of government. And then the indicators that are relevant to us is the one then that talks to the establishment or the development of the legislation on the National Council, that is as a support structure, and also then the governance structures must be established and the programs are reviewed as well, in terms of reviewed and developed and implemented to create awareness on GBVF, Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. As you know, that we are the custodians of the Constitution. If you can take me to the next slide. So I will move from the premise that GBVF is rooted in patriarchal social norms, gender inequalities, social, economical inequalities, family dysfunctions, low social value that is attached to women and girls, lack of accountability, etc. So some of these core drivers, you will see that they cannot be addressed by law. If you can take me to the next slide. So with our role in terms of supporting the implementation of pillar 1, as you know, Chair, that we have the 3 famous bills that were introduced by our Minister to Parliament in the previous financial year. And also as a department, we also developed the initial draft bill for the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide as a support. And we also then, our minister also approved the regulations relating to sexual offences courts, and this was done in February 2020. You can take me to the next slide. Now, I'm gonna be unpacking just a few, just to show that how these pieces of legislation have been crafted so as to ensure that there's accountability starting from the individual level, and there's also then the leadership and the risk and also the coordination that is in the implementation of this legislation and also the crafting thereof. Now, starting with the Domestic Violence Act, that is the principal act, it has a provision that says that any person with a material interest in the well-being of the complainant may apply for the protection order on behalf of the complainant. So what it means is that every person has a responsibility to ensure that then domestic violence comes to an end. And also then a neighbor can also make an application for protection order on behalf of a child of a neighbor that is subjected to domestic violence. And also it has a provision that is section 11 that says that not more than 3 persons may attend proceedings to provide support to the complainant. And this provision, it speaks to those victims who will have that ambivalence, the fear of the unknown, the fear of further retaliation, of embarrassment and humiliation. So what it says is that as a neighbor, as a member of parliament, as any person, you can actually go to court and to support that person. As a person is testifying, you are there giving that support next to that person. And this is a provision then that also enhances accountability. And also then we also have a provision that says that the prosecutors may not withdraw a charge of violation of protection order of protection order without being authorized to do so by the DPP or a designated senior official. And this one is a non-withdrawal restriction so as to limit then the flow out of the cases from the system. Take me to the next slide. Now, coming then to the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, to strengthen the elements of accountability that is also starting from the individual level up to the political level. It has a clause that says that functionaries must have a risk and obligation to report domestic violence, and that also is an obligation that is shared by the adult person. So meaning that bystanderism in matters of domestic violence is not permitted. This is what then the bill is proposing. It also says that then it's got a clause that also says that the electronic communication service providers must provide and furnish information to the court, that is the SMS, where is it coming from, and so on. So it is a responsibility that is placed then on all those electronic communication service providers. And also then we also have a provision that says that the legal aid South Africa must provide then those services to those complainants, the respondents, and the children who are coming to apply for a protection order unassisted. Can take me to the next slide. And moving on, then the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill also has a clause that says that the clerks of the court, we must as a department develop the directives for the clerks of the court. And one of the critical a clause there, it says that these directives must also then be accompanied with adequate disciplinary measures against non-compliance. So what it means is that when a person comes to the court and is experiencing the secondary traumatization, then there will be disciplinary measures that will be taken against that particular clerk of the court. Take me to the next slide. And it expands this and the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. It expands the responsibilities to different departments that were not necessarily participating in the criminal justice system, so as to expand accountability and responsibility on those departments to ensure that there's an end to GBVF in our country. So then there is a clause then that requires, that proposes that they develop their directives. That is the Department of Health, the Department of Social Development, Basic Education, Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Communication and Digital Technologies. You can take me to the next slide. Now coming to the second bill, which is the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill. This one is coming then from the demand that came from the women who were marching in 2018 to say that we need to tighten then the bail provisions. So it has clause 4 that requires a prosecutor to place on record the reasons for not opposing a bail application, that is in respect of any offense committed against a person who is in a domestic relationship with the accused, and also the related to the violation of the protection order which was issued. Take me to the next slide. And then we also have now coming to the last bill, which is the bill that is focusing actually on the amendments on Chapter 6 of the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Related Matters Amendment Act. And it is a chapter that is focusing on the establishment and management of the National Register for Sex Offenders. So if you look at this, it is an act then that says that the employers must take responsibility to ensure that their employees are vetted against the NRSO, so as to ensure that we don't have people who are working at service points that expose them to children and persons with mental disabilities who have previous convictions of sexual offenses. So it sort of protects then our children from pedophilia, and at the same time then places the responsibilities on employers to ensure that there is no repeat offending of sexual offenses, and there's also no new offending to a certain extent. You can take me to the next slide. Now, coming then to the second key intervention. This one, then it requires that there be coordination, there be structures that are established to ensure that then we take a multi-sectoral approach to the implementation of the laws that relate to gender-based violence and femicide. So we have first then the GBVF, our minister in the IMC is participating in that structure, and we are also participating in the technical task team. And also, as I said, that we are also then the conveners of the NSP Pillar 3 committee. And also, I might also say that then our minister is also chairing the CAC, which is responsible for the allocation of the CARA budget. And we also have then for sexual offences And this is a statutory body that is established by the Act, the Directors General Intersectoral Committee for the Management of the Sexual Offences Matters. And it is chaired by the DG of Justice. And also then it has attached to it the National Technical Committee, which I am chairing, and throughout the province, then you have the provincial technical committees that are reporting to the National Technical Committee, which is reporting to the DG's Intersectoral Committee. And then you have then on domestic violence, the other structures that are there that are tied with femicide, that are looking into different issues that relate to domestic violence and the femicide. And it is this structure then that also produces the initial document for the amendment of the Domestic Violence Act. And it also has then the multi-sectoral committees that have the representation of the civil society organizations at national and also at provincial level. This is the structure that is also developing the prevention strategy against femicide and also defining what femicide is for our country and the different types of femicide that we can say that we have based on the social context of South Africa. Now, the other structures then are the victim support and so on, but all of these structures are the structures that are established to ensure that then there is that effective coordination in the implementation of the legislation relating to gender-based violence and femicide. You can take me to the next slide. So these are the common members then of those governance structures. And they also have then the civil society organizations. I may also add to say that the DG's Intersectoral Committee on Sexual Offences reports is responsible for the coordination of the development of the annual reports that the Minister of Justice is required by the legislation to submit to Parliament every year. And this then gives them the opportunity Parliament to do the monitoring and exercise oversight in the implementation of the legislation relating to sexual offences. And the same applies to child justice. So we have that structure, then that DG's Intersectoral Committee on Child Justice that also then reports directly to the minister, and the minister then takes the responsibility of submitting the annual report to Parliament. Now, coming then to, as one of the indicators of Pillar 1, as a department in implementing that indicator, we, as conveners for Pillar 3, in the previous financial year, then we held 6 webinars on victim-centric justice system, titled Now and Not Later. Because as a department, we have taken now, there's a move for us then to convert the criminal justice system and make it victim-centric and ensure that there are a basket of support services that are found at the different service points, so as to ensure that we uproot the incidence of secondary traumatization from the system. And we also then had 71 GBVF public education interventions that were held on multiple media platforms. And it was radio shows, and also we have also what we call the Let's Talk Justice Radio Talk Show, which is aired over 80 community radio stations. It became very instrumental during the time of the various lockdowns that we experienced in the previous financial year. You can take me to the next slide. So what we are doing, as you know, that then our constitution has clocked the 25th year of implementation. So now we have moved further as a department then on a drive of ensuring that we are reaching out and to members of the public and to stakeholders and thus far we have had 49 outreach and activities to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Constitution. And some of these were led by our ministry, and it's still going on. Okay, so that is taking me then to the last slide. Thank you.
Chairperson, with the
Are
permission.
you still there?
No.
Advocate Kambule?
Yes, Chair.
Advocate.
Yes, I came to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I'm now going to call the third department, which is Department of Public Service and Administration. I also want to remind the presenters that let's please stick to the time. We started very late, and I know people are from the house sitting, that for us to be fruitful and active in our participation, I think we must stick to our time for us to have enough concentration on the presentation. Thank you very much. Let me call upon the third department, which is Public Service and Administration. I've seen the Deputy Minister, Honorable Dr. Pilani Majake, and welcome, DM. You were with us as a steering committee member, but I believe today you are here as the DM for Public Service and Administration. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening to members of the steering committee, deputy ministers and ministers that are here today, and the officials. What we will be looking at today from the Department of Public Service and Administration will be Pillar 1, accountability, coordination, and leadership. That will actually be looking at key interventions and the kind of activities that will be organized, and of course, indicators, measurable indicators, in order for us to be in the position to manage to measure impact. Basically, the intention is establishment of the mechanisms and processes to hold state and societal leadership accountable for taking firm stand against GBV, to address challenges that hamper progress made in terms of the above mentioned intention, which is establishment of mechanisms and processes and steps taken to mitigate these. Public service is the biggest employer in the country with approximately 1.3 million employees. It therefore has the biggest responsibility to provide workplace that is free from any form of violence. The Department of Public Service and Administration participates in 3 of the 6 pillars of the National Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide that was developed by the resolution of the Presidential Summit on GBV held in November 2018. As a department, we are ready to actually participate fully in this process because as a department, we are committed to seeing gender-based violence really being eradicated totally from society, allowing women to actually freely live their lives. Chairperson, let me request the DG of the Department of Public Service and Administration to take over from here and lead the presentation. Over to you, DG.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, and good afternoon, Chairperson and the members of the committee, as well as colleagues from the different departments, including the ministers and deputy ministers in attendance. Chairperson, with your permission, I wanted to ask the Secretariat if they can give me the rights to manage the slides and share the slides directly from my part, because the presentation that I'm working on has some updated information, a little bit of updated information. If it's possible, I'll appreciate. But if not, I can still work on this one. It's not a problem. Just in terms of pillar 1, which looks at accountability, the pillar that Deputy Minister was looking at, the key interventions relates to strengthening leadership and accountability across government and society to effectively respond to the GBV crisis in a strategically and institutionally coherent way with adequate technical and financial resources. The key activities relate to putting mechanisms and processes in place to hold state and societal leadership accountable, hold private and public sector accountable, indicators, percentage workplaces that have sexual harassment policies in place, and a percentage of private and public institutions on the implementation of sexual policies in place. Next slide. For us, the public service is a workplace is obliged to provide safe, healthy, and amicable working environment. And we have the DPSA Gender Equality Strategic Framework for the public service, which provides a wide set of options for the transformation of the workplace premises. I mean, for the workplace premised on the promotion and protection of human dignity and the rights of women, amongst others. It also recognizes the role of government in promoting non-sexism and non-discrimination for employees in the public service. Departments are required to plan and report on organizational support in order to promote women's empowerment and gender equality. That's objective 2. And also they must report on sexual harassment, workplace, gender-based violence.
There is no slides. We can't see the slides.
Oh, okay. Apologies, Chair. Let me try to. Can you see them now? Can you see the slide now?
Yes, we can see now.
Thank you, ma'am. So I was on the point where I was highlighting that departments are required to plan and report on their interventions aimed at promoting women's empowerment and gender equality, as well as on sexual harassment, workplace, gender-based violence, work-life balance, provision of childcare facilities. We also have a policy and procedure on management of sexual harassment in the public service, which was developed in order to promote a workplace that is free of sexual harassment, sexual favors, intimidation, and victimization, where the employer and employees respect one another's integrity, dignity, privacy, and the right to equality in the workplace. Also, the policy and procedure on management of sexual harassment provides a systematic and consistent approach to managing sexual harassment and steps to be taken when sexual harassment occurs within the public service. Departments are required to report annually to the DPSA on the number of cases reported and resolved, amongst other issues. Just in terms of the mechanisms and processes to hold state and societal leadership accountable, this is one of the questions that were asked by the committee. So again, for us, we're highlighting that our main focus relates to the work we're doing on sexual harassment. It is a form of gender-based violence, and it is prohibited whether it's based on the ground of sex, gender, and or sexual orientation. It is a form of sex discrimination that violates the right of individuals and undermines the integrity of the employment relationship. DPSA is responsible for the monitoring of the public service and the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities responsible to monitor all sectors. Subsequent to the 2018 Summit on GBV, DPSA made a concerted effort to improve the full implementation of the existing policies and strategies, and in order to eliminate GBV. We also focus on evidence-based approach for public resource allocation decisions and to help identify how challenges should be addressed and successes replicated. The government-wide monitoring and evaluation of any policy is, however, quite a complex and time-consuming process. There are capacity constraints that get reported in government departments, and they make at times monitoring and evaluation difficult. However, we have worked with departments to also look at innovation around electronic tools that can be used to reduce the burden for collation, analysis, and feedback in terms of the information that we require. This is just a graph that shows the number of reports that we have received from departments on the areas that we are working with, which is the area around sexual harassment and the area around the gender framework that I spoke to earlier on. And you can see that there's been a decline in terms of the reporting by departments, and it seems like it's starting to pick up in 2021. And many departments complain about the capacity to report and the capacity to do some of the compliance issues that we want to do, especially now with the budget cuts that have forced many departments to reduce in terms of their personnel numbers. We receive lots of those complaints about a limited capacity. In terms of the progress, in terms of the workplace, percentage workplace that have sexual harassment policies in place, all departments either have drafts or approved policies, and some have adopted the sexual harassment policy in their departmental bargaining councils. 90%, in terms of our assessment, 90% of these policies are aligned to the sexual harassment. We are reporting on the drafts because even though they are drafts, they use them in those departments to guide them, but their own approval processes sometimes take longer, but it's issues that we follow up with departments on an ongoing basis. 35 sensitivity sessions were conducted by departments in 1920 financial year, and 12,778 officials attended these sessions. The information we have detailed information which is disaggregated by salary levels, age, race, and gender. 33 departments reported that they have appointed sexual harassment advisors as required by the policy. This is 33 out of 42 departments, I think, that have reported that they have appointed sexual harassment advisors as required by the policy. 40 cases were reported by the departments, and 19 cases were carried over from the previous financial year as they were not resolved. We think that there's a lot of underreporting of sexual harassment that happens in departments, and it's an issue that we're battling with, and we're looking at how do we ensure that there's improved ways of reporting, because in some instances, employees would say that sometimes they have a sense that the reporting mechanism doesn't work because the people who they are expected to report to may be the ones who are perpetrators or may be linked or associated with the perpetrators. But in terms of the processes that are in place, the accounting officers have to take responsibility for those reports and ensure that those cases are dealt with in a fair manner, and ensure that where there are cases of gender-based violence, where there are cases of sexual harassment, the official who is involved in terms of being the victim is also supported. There is also education and awareness around the policy and gender-based violence and sexual harassment issues generally. So from the side of DPSA, we continue to educate and raise awareness. These are some of the things that we have done, which I thought, which we thought we would raise with the committee. NSG, which is part of the MPSA portfolio, reporting to MPSA, has a gender mainstreaming course, and there's a section specifically that focuses on sexual harassment, and we've worked very closely with them around developing the content, and up to 6,000 officials have been trained in all 3 spheres of government. As of 1st April 2020, there is a standalone training program now based on the sexual harassment policy and framework that was developed by the NSG, and up to date, I think there's about 238 officials who have attended. In August last year, the NSG, I think together with the Department of Women, launched the program, the course on gender-based violence in collaboration with the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities. The course covers the following critical areas: gender mainstreaming in the public service, gender-based violence, gender responsive planning and budgeting. To date, 8 training sessions have been rolled out, and over 200 participants have attended and participated. August 2020, DPSA hosted a webinar that focused on sexual harassment in the public service, which involved participation of employees, and the panel which was discussing, our aim was to raise awareness on the policy and the roles of heads of departments in terms of that policy as well. DPSA participates in a series of awareness webinars planned for Pillar 5, and I won't go into detail into those webinars, but we have some information there. To support and commit, this is just a statement that we're showing that the Deputy Minister of DPSA in 2020 presented to the ILO as part of the work that we do to support and commit the public service to the work in fighting gender-based violence. Just in terms of challenges, Chair, as I move towards closure, I think that some of the challenges that we have experienced as DPSA include poor submission rate of reports by departments. I've indicated earlier on that most of them complain about capacity, inconsistent submission of reports by departments, and this hampers a capability to do comparative analysis and to measure progress across government. Officials undergo sensitivity training, but very few departments conduct sessions in their own departments, and very few managers attend these training sessions. The majority of people who attend these sessions are below level 8. So your senior management service clearly is not participating and attending this service, these training areas. Number of cases reported, there's very few cases that get reported. And yet when we interact with face-to-face with departments and officials will relate incidents of sexual harassment, but they don't report them, especially in terms. You get lots of reports through the informal channels or one-on-one, but they don't report these things officially in the departments. I think for fear of victimization or for fear of other things that may come through. Number of disciplinary cases arising from sexual harassment on PESAL. So departments will report that they do not have cases, but on PESAL, there will be a record of such cases. The highest are in the departments of education and all 9 provinces. Number of cases resolved, even when departments report cases, resolution takes very long, as long as a year on average in most of the cases. Problems that hinder the conclusion of cases: lack of cooperation by victims, witnesses and perpetrators, unavailability of presiding officers, and insufficient evidence. I think with sexual harassment cases, evidence is always insufficient. Evidence is always a challenge. Despite having legislation and policies, violence, harassment, including GBV, still remains high in the public service. Very few people report sexual harassment for fear of victimization and retaliation. In terms of planned interventions, we do the letters to the DGs all the time in the departments to just follow up on compliance issues. And we're still in the process of the latest that we have sent in relation to the latest report. We are still collecting and analyzing the responses. just some of the new initiatives that we're thinking about. We definitely need to review the policy and procedures on the management of sexual harassment in the public service to incorporate the issues raised in the ILO Convention 190, and as well as to relook the issue of reporting, how sexual harassment gets reported in the public service. There's a number of ideas that we are working around. One is to partner with institutions like your Gender Commission or any other institutions that may be working with government and that may have a capability to help with the managing a response system or a reporting system, so people can report knowing that they are not going to be, they are not reporting to somebody who is in the department where they may be having trust issues, but also effective use of technology, maybe centralizing reporting mechanisms and using technology apps to be able to, for people to access that information, to access the app and report the information. We also would like to do a survey on sexual harassment in the public service, just to have a sense of a baseline of how big the problem is, because currently we just rely on the reports that come through, and these reports, as I highlighted earlier, some of the challenges, there are departments and provinces that do not report or under-report, so there may not be a fair reflection of what's happening on the ground in terms of public service. We also want to do training specifically for our heads of departments on sexual harassment policy and procedures, because they are supposed to champion this in the various departments, and many of them are seemingly not championing it in the manner that they should be championing it. I've spoken about reviewing the reporting mechanisms for sexual harassment cases. We also need to look at partnerships that work for us in the public service, and we continue to support the other pillars, including Pillar 1, in terms of our initiatives. I do want to say, Chairperson, that the one biggest challenge that we have not written here, I think it relates to resources, it relates to budgets. The survey on sexual harassment, we would have loved to do it in the previous financial year, but we didn't have the budget to do it because we've had to take so much budget cuts. And hence they're looking for partnerships that can hopefully be able to support us to do this work at a lower cost or at no cost at all is one of the issues we're looking at. We are also engaging with some of our partners like GEMS to see what they can do internally in the public service, because these are issues that are key in terms of health and wellness of our employees as well. I think that this is my last slide, and I'd like to thank you, Chairperson, for allowing us this opportunity as DPSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. I haven't seen the Minister or the DM, but I think the DG is here. DG Williamson.
Good evening, Chairperson. And I want to also say to all the ministers and deputy ministers present and colleagues, I firstly need to just confirm an apology for our minister this evening. But if the Chair will allow, I'll then proceed with the presentation. So thank you, Chairperson, firstly for the opportunity, and maybe just to say that today actually marks almost 65 years since we had the Fearless Women march on the Union buildings in Victoria. So today we sadly still talk of violence against women. And we must just intensify that fight for tougher gender-based violence laws, public awareness, and just access to legal protection for all women, especially poor women. We need to capitalize on our BBM as a vehicle for also tackling this persistent challenge.
Ms. Williamson, I just want to check with honorable members. Is she clear?
No, Chair, we can't hear her.
No, maybe it's myself because I can't hear what she's saying.
No, she's not clear, Chair.
She's not here.
There's an echo.
Can you check your position?
Yes, I've just shifted it somewhat, Chair. Is that better? I'll also stop my video, maybe just to assist. that better?
Try and stop it. Maybe you will be clear.
Okay, I've stopped the video, Chair.
Okay. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. And maybe then just to say that we have also aligned our responsibility to pillar 1. And of course, it does come from the National Strategic Plan. And there are a number of areas for which we are committing ourselves. And the first one is just the rollout of a national response to the gender-based violence and femicide for our provincial and local structures, just ensuring that we do put mechanisms in place and processes that will actually just help with the whole societal leadership and taking everyone along around having a firm stand against gender-based violence. And then also we're committing to an effective multi-sectoral coordination that is just across all the spheres, whether they are lateral or whether they are vertical. And then also just partnering or fostering partnerships to respond to the crisis, locating the response, in our locally based structures, and of course through the DDM in particular, and then just driving the national framework through our municipal engagements and just civil society as a whole. Next slide, please. So we through the DDM approach then are looking at localizing our response to gender-based violence. And through the DDM implementation framework, we've developed this framework for the whole of government that will give us then that common approach around the interventions that we also need to support around gender-based violence. And within our DCOG annual performance plan, we've also incorporated the gender-based violence indicators and targets. And we are also working closely with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities on the proposed indicators, as also mentioned earlier by Shoki. And we continue to then engage the Commission for Gender Equality. We can move to the next slide. So through the overall adoption of the gender mainstream is also critical in the developmental municipal plans. So when we receive the individual development plans to all the municipalities, we also have looked at what are some of the interventions, that municipalities are looking at around GBV and what are they prioritizing. We have also then looked at specifically sensitizing municipalities on their role in the implementation. We've already conducted some workshops and specifically in the Eastern Cape and KZN. And just looking at the implementation of GBV, we are also standing on the National Public Participation. We have a standing item, on the National Public Participation Coordinating Forum. And through our IGR structures, we've also established to support and monitor community participation in municipalities. And the forums are meeting quarterly, and all provinces are required to report on what they've implemented around GBVF activities. So the department also provides that direct support to the provinces to customize their performance indicators. Next slide, please. So in order for us to then ensure that we have effective multi-sectoral coordination and collaboration, two provinces have also supported to prepare the establishment of new ward committees following the 2021 local government election preparation. And those ward committee members will also then be inducted on the prevention and response to GBV incidents. So Gauteng and Western Cape and Mpumalanga provinces have also committed to include GBV in their ward committee inductions. And we also see that GBV is a feature on our GovChat app, which we had launched in March 2021. And we've already had some GBV related reports reported to us through this application. And we've also had some requests, you know, for GBV contact center details, and just looking at some safe space ratings, you know, around the platform. If we could move to the next slide. We've also fostered partnerships to respond to GBV. We've had a joint collaboration between ourselves and the UN as part of our DDM implementation, with the emphasis or focus on our pilot sites of Waterberg, eThekwini, and OR Tambo. And of course, the partnership in itself has looked at some pillars, and these are interrelated pillars, where we're looking to unlock economic value chains through inclusive and sustainable growth, social transformation, and this is where we have advocacy around gender-based violence and femicide, and then just the service delivery enhancement. We will be focusing on resuscitating and restructuring entities through the support of the Tusong centers. If we can move to the next slide. So within our Community Works program, and I'm not going to go through each of the provinces as well, we do have some activities, and these activities are activities that create awareness around gender-based violence, but also just these are some of the programs where we have groups that either lead or provide support, whether it's in terms of counseling and so on, or victims, and also just looking at some men's forums where we also then have some activities that just ensure that we encourage that there are reports of what's really going on around gender-based violence. So I will take these parts as being read. So you've got the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, KZN. So they all have various names to their programs. So for instance, we are talking about the program that's actually called the Football for Youth program as an example. So if you move then to slide 10 and to slide 11, we covered KZN and the other province. So Chairperson, maybe just to also add at this particular point is that even internally within the department, we also have looked at women in local government. We've had a session around this. And we are also looking at particular programs where we're following the 8 principles and action plans for promoting women empowerment and gender equality within the workplace. We also have some programs and activities that have been lined up for women in management in particular. But of course, maybe then just to mention that we've also conducted a survey, you know, where we've assessed the levels of sexual harassment within our departments. And of course, this is a cause for concern for us, but it's something that we will also then be workshopping and dealing with going forward. So as we recalibrate our resolve to fight GBV, we will continue to work together to observe that the preventative measures, because we believe that we can only win if we all join hands in the spirit of the DDM approach. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much, DG, Department of Employment and Labor. Deputy Minister Muloi, over to you. DM.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just want to acknowledge protocol. Thank you so much, honorable members, honorable Chairperson. Allow me to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration, and actually the Minister, Minister Mkwana Mashabane from Department of Women, Youth, Persons with Disabilities,
from the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, Deputy Minister who's already presented, Deputy Minister JJ, and all the other ministers who might not have presented but who are present in the session. Chair, thanks so much. And I think at this point in time, allow me to take this opportunity first and foremost to thank my minister for having this thought of sending me to this meeting to represent him, because he is the one who was invited. And I think he did so simply because it's Women's Month. And as a department, we do have a deputy minister who's a woman. And I think I really want to take this opportunity to thank him for bringing me here. And I think
that's why you want account.
Sorry.
For as long as
Malibongwe. So I think our presentation we have presented, and I think the host chair, if you allow the host to move on to the presentation outline, we are indicating what is in our presentation. I'm not going to be too long on this. I think we are pressed for time. I think we are asked these questions, or what is being done to hold the private sector accountable for the development and rollout of sexual harassment policies and workplace strategies. In this presentation, again, we have the issues we have raised. We are raising the challenges that hampers progress made with regards to the above, and the steps taken or required to mitigate such challenges, including, but not least, our department's way forward in terms of these questions as asked. Let's move to page 2. That we are asked, as it has already been said there, as to what is it being done to hold the private sector accountable. So first, as a department, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, we need to outline we are going to be outlining in this presentation the existing laws of our government on harassment and or sexual harassment policies and workplace strategies, and secondly, the legal obligations of employers in relation to sexual harassment in the workplace, and thirdly, what has been done by the Department of Employment and Labor to hold private sector accountable. So this is, if we can move on, my host. So there are laws, and I think in all the presentations that have taken place before me, there are laws that our country that we have enacted, and among others, in terms of our department, we do have labor laws that talks to violence and harassment. And I think in terms 66 of 1995, harassment of employees may also give rise to issues regulated by the Labor Relations Act. And in particular, employers are required to ensure that those persons who engage in harassment, including violence at the workplace, are subjected to discipline in accordance with the Code of Good Practice that talks to unfair dismissal. So harassment also may also constitute an unfair labor practice in terms of Section 186, subsection 2 of the Labor Relations Act. And in terms of Occupational Health and Safety Act of number 85 of 1993, where an employee or worker, I'm using them interchangeably because somewhere we call them workers, somewhere we call them employees. So their duties are of such a nature that they are exposed to a significant risk of violence while at work. So it is a responsibility of the employer to make sure that they take such steps as reasonably practicable to eliminate or mitigate this hazard, and it is a responsibility of employers. So the employer must also institute measures consistent with the Occupational Health and Safety Act to ensure the protection for employees against harassment and violence in the workplace. So these are some of the pieces of legislation, honorable members, and Chair, that we have in our department that deals with violence and harassment in the world of work. So Chapter 2 of the Employment Equity Act prohibits all forms of unfair discrimination in employment. And Section 5 of the same act requires employers to take steps to promote equal opportunity in the workplace by eliminating unfair discrimination in any employment policy or practice. So these are some of the things that we are dealing with. Section 6, subsection 1 of the same Act of Employment Equity Act states that, and I quote, that no person may unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against an employee in any employment policy or practice on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, family responsibility, ethnic or social origin, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, HIV status, conscience, belief, political opinion, culture, language, birth, or on any other arbitrary grounds, close quote. So this is loaded. I'm sure we'll agree with me that it is loaded. Ageism, we know. Those who are, HIV positive, we might want to discriminate them. So this talks to the fact that it is unfair labor practice if we do this. So if you move further, that Section 6, subsection 3 of the same Employment Equity Act states that, I quote, harassment of an employee is a form of unfair discrimination and is prohibited on one of grounds in Section 6, subsection 1 of the same Act of Employment Equity Act, close quote. So if we move to page 6, Chair, host, if you go to page 6, in terms of what our department has done, move to page 6, please, of the presentation. Now, we do have Employment Equity Act codes of good practice in slide number 6, Chair. Now, this is a policy that we have, and this code on handling of sexual harassment cases is page number 6 or slide 6 of the presentation. I think we are far ahead of me, but this code of good practice talks to code on handling of sexual harassment cases. I think it was enacted in August 2005. HR code, we do have a HR code dealing with harassment in the workplace, and the objectives in this of the codes are, among others, but not limited to, eliminating the harassment of employees in the workplace and while working or engaged in work-related activities. Say, for instance, you send your employees to a workshop somewhere and then they get harassed while in a hotel or one way or the other. So it's work-related activities, so it includes that. So to provide guidelines to employers, also this codes of good practice, it provides guidelines to employers, employees on the discrimination in the workplace and on human resource policies, procedures and practices related to harassment and appropriate procedures to deal with harassment and prevent its recurrence. If we move to page 7, the legal obligations of the employer. Employers in both private and public sectors are under obligation in terms of Section 60 of the Act to take proactive and remedial steps to prevent all forms of harassment in the workplace. Should, subject to any existing collective agreement and applicable statutory provisions in respect of harassment, adopt a harassment policy. And among others, the procedures to be followed by a complainant about harassment or sexual harassment by an employer when harassment is alleged, and should be outlined in such policy. So these are some of the things that we have, and the availability of counseling, treatment, care, and support programs for employees should be outlined in the policy. So when an allegation of harassment, for instance, by an employee has been brought to the attention of the employer must consult all relevant parties. The employer should take the necessary steps to address the complaint, and in accordance with this code and the employer's policy, because the code must must supplement the policies, the employer's policy, and the employer should also take necessary steps to eliminate the harassment. So the failure to take adequate steps to eliminate harassment once an allegation of harassment by an employee has been submitted within a reasonable time will render the employer viciously liable for the conduct of the employee in terms of Section 6 of the Employment Equity Act. If you move to page 8, what has been done by our Department of Employment and Labor to hold the private sector accountable. So we annually, as a department, we have national advocacy campaigns which are conducted in all provinces to raise awareness and educate employees or workers in general on violence and harassment in the workplace as per the current codes on sexual harassment. But also the employment equity it carries joint campaigns with CCMA. We have of employment equity having joint campaigns with CCMA, which was held last in October 2019 to publicize the International Labour Organization's Convention 190 concerning violence and harassment in the world of work, and the CCMA's sexual harassment cases, because you should be aware that some of the cases are escalated to the CCMA. And subsequent to that, we had the employment equity virtual workshops conducted during August and September of 2020 on the draft code on the prevention and elimination of harassment in the workplace, conducted in all 9 provinces with employers and employees. And Employment Equity Act empowers labor inspectors to advocate and raise awareness on issues of violence and harassment or any other unfair discrimination matters with employers and employees, but sometimes they have no jurisdiction to enforce. But Section 10 of the Employment Equity Act empowers the CCMA itself and the labor courts to deal with unfair discrimination disputes, for instance, harassment and or sexual harassment cases, and to issue and enforce awards in this regard. So such matters are referred to CCMA and the labor courts for enforcement and for awards So the challenges that we experience that hampers progress made with regards to harassment and or sexual harassment in the workplace. These challenges that hampers progress include, but they are not necessarily limited to non-compliance by employers. So we're experiencing non-compliance most often than not by employers, legal obligations to develop and implement harassment and or sexual harassment workplace policies and programs to prevent and eliminate harassment or sexual harassment, and in terms of limited knowledge of employees and in relation to their rights. So there is a shortcoming with regards to the employees' knowledge to what needs to happen or what needs to take place with regards to fair treatment and how to challenge unfair discriminatory employment policies in the workplace and practices with regards to harassment and or sexual harassment. And more other challenges relates to measures on the prevention of and elimination of harassment and sexual harassment, which are inadequately covered in collective agreements, bidding on both employers and employees themselves. So challenges talks to training or induction programs, both at the workplace and in trade unions, which do not necessarily adequately cover issues of harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace, and the issue of advocacy and education campaigns on harassment, sexual harassment appears to be most cases reactive rather than proactive. So steps to be taken or required to mitigate such challenges that I've alluded to already. We need to develop and implement harassment or sexual harassment workplace policies and programs, collective agreements that talks to training or induction programs, which must include harassment and or sexual harassment clauses or modules in those training programs. And we need to continuously advocate for and education campaign, which must be proactive to raise awareness and educate the society as a whole. I think we need to implement this from school foundation phase and up to the workplace. So we need to inculcate a culture that talks to this awareness about what is actually sexual harassment, so that everybody should know from as little as when they are in foundation phase at school. A young girl must know, if you touch me, or even a young boy, they should know that it is inappropriate for them to be touched in their private parts, or, so they need to know that. So our way, further ado, as a Department of Employment and Labor, we are in talks with NETLAC. You know that we have social partners as the Department of Employment and Labor through NETLAC, where all the other stakeholders are represented in terms of business, employer organizations, organized labor community. They are to finalize their deliberations on the draft code on the prevention and elimination of harassment in the workplace, which we as a department have tabled in March of this year, 2021. And it is envisaged that the final code will be published for implementation by the end of March 2022. So we continue, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, to conduct annual advocacy campaigns to raise awareness on this code. And our target audience are employers, employees, employer organizations, trade unions, HR practitioners, academics, civil society, and others. We think at some point, maybe in our next round of reports or reporting, we will give progress report as to how far are we in terms of implementation of some of the programs that might be behind in terms of what we needed to report about. But I want to take this opportunity, Chair, Honorable Chair, to thank you for your audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DM, for your presentation. Department of Communication and Digital Technologies. I haven't seen the minister or the DM here. The DG, Ms. Jordan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. A very good afternoon to the Honorable Chair and Honorable members, the ministers and the deputy ministers present, along with the colleagues. Chair, firstly, from the department, I would like to apologize that we submitted our presentation late. As you know, that there was a transition, and we seem to have lost information between the offices. So we want to pass on that apology, Chair, to you as well as the committee. Next slide, please. Just to indicate that in terms of our responsibility, some of the issues have been touched upon in terms of the framework and the objectives, both by DG Shoki Shabalala, as well as our colleagues from Justice as well, in terms of the programs that we're doing, both in terms of connectivity as well as cybersecurity. But just to say that our response in terms of the objectives, we continue to align these, both in terms of the National Strategic Plan, and also looking at it in terms of our commitment in the department. We continue to implement, to do the implementation with our social partners. We want to expand on the call to action for men as well as partners and boys to stand against rape and sexual abuse of women and children. And lastly, we also want to increase awareness and drive change in this patriarchal society. And I'm going to touch on this because we're also trying to do our own transformation. And this would then include that change in technology, social media, culture, and customs, and in other areas as well. Next slide, please. As a department, our responsibility is in terms of developing policies. We came up with the National Integrated ICT policy that includes several provisions in terms of empowerment of women in the ICT sector. The department also released a broadband policy that outlines the plans to connect South Africa. And in this regard, Chair, I just want to say that ours in terms of connecting health clinics, the education, as well as other critical government institutions such as the police, as well as your regional or satellite courts, is precisely on the fact that we want to ensure that our systems are interoperable from both SETA's perspective, and then for ease of record or document management. But we also want to ensure that even as citizens, they're able to then have the basic access to ICTs in order for their livelihoods to be improved, but to also have then a platform for reporting. So our national development plan indicates also that by 2030, ICTs will underpin the dynamic information society. And in this regard, we're also aggressively pursuing training as well as digital skilling training programs. And we've got a set target in terms of empowering girls as well. We've been working also with the UN, similar to all our sister departments as well. And under the UN, we drive a number of programs. Under the telecommunication sector, there's programs such as Equals, where we are seeking to ensure not just gender equality and gender parity in the sector, especially it being such a technical sector that we want to bring in more female engineers and technical experts. We're also working for ICT for Girls program and also the Take a Girl Child to Work program that we've been running over the years. Recently, we've also introduced the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where we see that it will drive our digital transformation. And in that regard, we've also identified 4 IR programs, which are becoming both an enabler, but also then how to enhance the key sectors such as health, education, to ensure the safety of citizens, but also then they can leverage in terms of smarter technologies for their own benefit. Next slide. With regards to our state of readiness as the department, as I said, we have a mandate to enable the country to be digitally ready for this, as I indicated, and then to also advise on the technologies best that can play a role in combating the gender-based violence as well as domestic violence. So we do also have a cybersecurity program, and we've been running the cybersecurity awareness in schools, as well as within communities as well. In terms of readiness, it should be noted that the DCDT has implemented programs which I'll highlight in the next slide. We're also working with our state-owned entities to assist in terms of raising awareness amongst the programs that we were running in the department. If we could go to the next slide, then I can start to unpack those. So as I indicated that the department has included the gender equity and empowerment targets in our business plan for the current financial year, and we've set aside funding for that. Our main focus, especially during COVID, Chair and honorable members, we've seen the need to increase the issues related to children and cybersecurity. This has moved from fake news to then being exploited online. DCTT has also provided input in terms of the amendment of the gender-based violence bill. And we also then putting critical focus in terms of sexual offenses, in terms of our online, and I will touch on this further in terms of the work that is being done by one of our entities, the FPB. And we continue then in the process of the implementation. There's key programs that are touched on, the ICT Empowerment Program, as well as a comprehensive child online protection program. And then we've also included targets on gender mainstreaming and gender equity in the business plan in line with our NSP. And we've also developed and we're also reviewing the gender and ICT strategy as well to cater then for the new technologies. We support places of safety for women and children, working with all three spheres of government, facilitating access to ICT training as well as ICT equipment. And as I said, we also roll out extensively our cybersecurity and cyber awareness program. We continue then raising awareness on online safety for women and to avoid then issues of cyber bullying. Next slide. With regards to our entities, I'll just touch on a few of those because we've got 11 entities as a department. So under SABC, SABC continues to roll out national programs on all their platforms, campaigns that are focusing in terms of gender-based violence. They continue being broadcasted. The SABC has an education program in terms of a year-long campaign against femicide and rape that was launched in February 2020 and is still continuing. There's a budget that has been set aside for both TV as well as radio. From a corporate investment perspective, SABC continues to support NGOs on gender-based violence, and we've set aside budget on that. With CETA, CETA has got specific departments focused on gender, wellness department in the human resources, governance and risk, as well as compliance and integrity, as well as information system security as to seek to ensure the enhancement online. There's a zero tolerance with regards to cybersecurity, cyber violence, and bullying. And CETA has in place a CETA harassment policy. Next slide, please. With regards to the next entity, SAPO, in 2019, SAPO launched a gender desk that consists of both genders to coordinate the response to crisis on gender-based violence and femicide. Honorable members, you would also recall the unfortunate and terrible incident of Uyinene Khojana. So SAPO then took a proactive response on that to also educate then all staff members. The strategy seeks to address then the challenges faced, and currently SAPO aims at changing the patriarchal norms as well as the behavioral aspects as well. Postbank also has a number of programs and policies in place: the sexual harassment policy, ethics policy, as well as disciplinary and grievance policy. They offer employees assistance to support them through the employee wellness, but we're also now, in terms of empowerment program, rolling out programs to then support more participation of women in the economy as well. So the Post Bank is aggressively ensuring empowerment of women, especially in those rural and remote areas. Next slide, please. With BBI, the number of incidents, number of initiatives addressing gender-based violence and femicide. They have a zero tolerance approach to cyber violence and bullying, and are also then they're taking steps to mitigate this. They've also launched a white ribbon campaign. This is then a flagship project led by the Joe Slovo Foundation and supported by the United Nations. And this includes leadership support, buy-in, as well as zero tolerance on gender-based violence. Then we also have the respective policies to then address that. USASA, they also have a committee on gender-based violence, and they also have the respective programs that they implement as well as they roll out connectivity as well as awareness programs. They're also keen to look at the gender equity targets within the the organization as well. Next slide, please. The FPB, this is one of the entities that has done much work. So over and above in terms of the child protection officers that have been trained with our international organization in Hope. From this, a number of cases have been completed in terms of their assessment. They do online monitoring in terms of various websites, as well as online distribution of sites in terms of non-compliance. Those are then brought up. They also assisted in appearing as a witness in court in a child sexual abuse, material exploitation. And then they also then ensure the distributors are legally registered and legal materials are destructed. That's to ensure compliance. In this regard, about 94 raids have been conducted, and that led to about 3 destruction or destroying of materials. In Northern Cape and Western Cape region, there's been a total of 1,273 discs containing adult material that have been destroyed, as well as them, and these equate to about 10 million or so. They continue with media engagement and public awareness programs as well. Next slide, please. Still continuing on with FPB. So they're basically conducting research in terms of how then enhancing the role of the regulator in curbing and how to actually function in a tech environment. And then they're also assisting the Presidential Council on Women in terms of the Violence Against Women report as well. They've developed a 6-year outlook in terms of trends on various statistics and trends, and they share this with various stakeholders, and they work with international partners such as the German GIZ and the UN Women on their Step It Up for Gender project, and they also continue to work with Gender Links and other NGOs in the country as well. They continue then with the regular surveys. Chair, as I conclude, I just wanted to touch on other programs that we've set aside now, focus more on empowerment, as well as transformation of our sector. As I indicated, that it's very male dominated. I do know that what we're doing is certainly not sufficient, but at least it's progressing. So in BBI, they continue to have a set aside target of 30% for SCM procurement by SMMEs, female SMME companies. Similarly with CETA, in fact, CETA overachieved their target. They had, of the procurement that was done in the last financial year, 40% actually went to female SMMEs. And this was difficult, I just wanted to touch, because there was a cabinet decision in terms of saying that they should be a set aside, but we're still waiting for the legislative process to be enacted or finalized in government, so that we be able to then live up to the set targets. With regards to ICASA, as you would know, that we're currently busy now with the licensing of the spectrum, and under the wireless open access network, we've set a threshold requirement of 20% of the consortium must have 20% Black female ownership in there. And this is assisting in terms of the transformation of the sector. And then as we roll out our broadcasting and local content programs, we're also encouraging broader participation by women. In terms of the BBBE, our status, Chair, as I said, it's not desirable, but we're working towards that. At board level, our representation is at 25%. At executive director level, this is now looking at this broader sector, executive director level is at 25%. Black female executive management level is at 30%, and similarly at senior management. And there's a slight improvement in terms of middle management as well as junior management, Chair. But as I indicated, more can be done. That will then conclude the presentation from the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, DG. And thank you very much to all the presenters. We're now going to interact with the presentation. Honorable members, can we interact with the presentations that we received from all the departments? Thanks. Is there any hands? Oh, I see Honorable Van der Merwe, Honorable Ndaba, Honorable Sharif, Honorable Dr. Tembekwayo. In that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and let me just take the opportunity to thank each and every department for their presentations. We really did appreciate it. Of course, I'm not going to be able to ask questions on all the presentations. But let me first just say that in this Women's Month, I think we must all be very concerned with regards to the latest statistics in terms of gender-based violence that were just released, which pointed to 10,000 rape cases between April and June of this year alone. So I think if we are honest with ourselves as parliamentarians, then of course the National Strategic Plan is a step in the right direction, but it also shows us that not enough is being done to fight gender-based violence. And so I want to firstly go to the presentation from the Department of Public Service and Administration. I think the admission around reporting on harassment, the presenter said the underreporting of sexual harassment is a cause for concern, and few people are coming forward to report sexual harassment in the workplace. And it's largely due to the fear for victimization. And I thought maybe, maybe we can also get an indication from what is it that they're thinking that they can do differently to encourage people to come forward to report cases of sexual harassment while still protecting the individuals involved. Because I also heard from Caucus, they were speaking about making use of the government chat app. And I wasn't quite clear whether it's used for people in government to be able to report these cases, but maybe this is something the Department of Public Service and Administration can look at. Maybe it's something that they can utilize this government chat app. Maybe people can utilize that to report cases anonymously. But I was also wondering whether any of the government departments that presented today is actually actively encouraging or promoting or publicizing the Gender-Based Violence Command Center number to the employees. So that's another question, whether any of them are actually making an effort to make sure that their various employees are aware of this command center. My fear is always that we do have a government gender-based violence command center. It is a toll-free number. It's got a please call me service. It is linked to authorities and social workers. But I always fear that not enough people know about it or do have access to it. And then maybe also my next question is to the Department of Communications. I've always felt that as much as I know the SABC is doing their bit in terms of promoting or fighting gender-based violence and promoting women's rights, but I've always felt that this number, for example, this command center number, could be more actively promoted on SABC news channels, either at the bottom of the news strap or as a little logo. Because I think a lot of people obviously watch news, and there's a variety of soapies that people watch. And if we actively promote this number, then more people will have access to that. Then I thought, and finally, the Department of Communications also spoke about two other important things. They mentioned the representation of females in the department, in leadership and management. And I wanted to ask the other departments to also give us an indication of that. And finally, they also spoke about a cabinet resolution which sought to ask, well, for the department to invest more heavily in female-led small businesses, and I think that is welcomed. But I also want to ask the Department of Women and the Presidency, I believe that there was a cabinet resolution in 2018 which called on all departments to absorb and employ the social workers that have been trained by the state. And key departments that were asked to absorb these social workers were obviously like your Department of Police, Education. And I think social workers can play a very important role in the fight against gender-based violence, specifically at institutions of higher learning and at schools. What is it that Women in the Presidency can do to ensure that these social workers, in line with Cabinet's resolution of 2018, is in fact employed and absorbed and deployed to hotspot areas where we find gender-based violence? Thank you very much, Chairperson. I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndaba.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good evening to all the members and the ministers and the deputy ministers who are part of this meeting. Chair, I don't want to engage on the reports that were presented today, but what I wanted to say, Chair, is that as the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, we are going to invite all the departments that are here today, so that as the Portfolio Committee, we can engage in detail with all the presentations that have been made today, so that at least we can even check, Chair, on whether in their KPIs, all the things that they have reported that they are doing today, how far are they with all those things? But Chairperson, for today, I just want to just say I'm welcoming all the presentation, and we'll see all the departments in our Portfolio Committee. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndaba. You are progressive. The third, or Honorable Sharif.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good evening to everybody online. Chair, I'm just going to support Honorable Ndaba as a member of the Committee of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. It's going to be important to have these departments come and present, but I would urge departments to not only come with their presentations, but to bring their frameworks and present on that as well, so that we have the opportunity to look at the targets and track the progress of implementation. Chairperson, it's one thing to come here and speak words and paragraphs. It's another to actually show us exactly what you're doing. And this can only happen through the frameworks and the monitoring and evaluation frameworks. And so this is going to be very important to allow us to do our job of oversight on these departments, because at the end of the day, it is us as public representatives that must answer to women and members of the LGBT in this country. And therefore, it is our responsibility to ensure that what departments are saying, they are actually doing on the ground. So that's my first point. I'm going to start with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. I think for the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, it will be important to get a report on the implementation of the ERAP. So that, because it was presented to the Committee of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, and I think it must be presented to the full caucus of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, so that women can engage on that and perhaps give recommendations on how the department can improve apart from what the committee has said. Chairperson, I'm going to DPSA. In terms of the Gender Equity Strategic Framework, again, we need to see it. We need to see how well you're doing and what you're doing. That includes the PPM-SHPS. That's a very long one, but that's what we need to look at. Chair, in terms of public service and admin, I just want to speak about the challenges on slide 10, where you list 9. And then on slide 13, if I'm not mistaken, you then give planned interventions, and that's only one planned intervention, and that's you writing to departmental heads. Now, please, you must understand that writing to a departmental head does not necessarily mean that they are going to respond to you. So please, can you tell us what interventions are you going to be doing to ensure that you can get these departments to report to you? And I think that given the 11, because you listed 9 challenges, each of these challenges should have their own interventions. You can't group these 9 very different challenges and one intervention saying you're going to write to departmental heads. It's just not good enough. And I think I would recommend to the department to maybe go back and think about it. I'm going to move on to communication. I want them, please, can you explain what role you take in online harassment and revenge porn? Have you introduced any new technology that you're able to, hold people accountable? Because what sort of, what tools do you use to hold perpetrators accountable, specifically for online harassment and revenge porn? And then in terms of the post bank, you spoke about Uyenene. And if you're going to bring the case up, you must also bring about the calls for vetting your employers, because that was one of the biggest issues in this case, was that the vetting of post-bank employees were not done. And so we have perpetrators working within the entity. And so I want to find out, what are you doing, and are you vetting employees so that nothing like this ever happens again? Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Honorable Sharif. Dr. Tembekwayo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for this opportunity provided. And I would like to also say thank you to the presentations made tonight. But I just would like to say on question 1, that is directed to the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. It was mentioned that they have a website page. So my question is, how effective or accessible is the website page established, including social media coordination to communities, especially those at rural and deep rural areas? The second question is directed to the Justice and Correctional Services. And I am taking this opportunity to direct this question to them, because I have tried whatever means possible there are, but I haven't had any response from their department. And the background is because of the Restorative Justice Department under Correctional Services has had social auxiliary workers working on a renewal contract since 2015 to date. With recurring contracts, there has existed some periods where the contracts would be ended and the workers would stay home for periods ranging between 3 to 6 months without proper communication taking place. To date, their contracts have ended, yet the same positions are now re-advertised. As a result, uncertainty occurs whether their applications would be considered. Just to take you back, during the strategic planning, which was held between 16th to 20th July 2018, an important decision was taken by your department, which is reflected in page 35 of that report. And the following is stated clearly there. The current social auxiliary workers appointed on a contract basis must be incorporated into a permanent structure, and in brackets, it's written the positions. This has not been implemented, and I believe such decisions are binding. Why has the decisions not been implemented to date? The third question is directed to the public service and administration alone. And it's mentioned that there is a lot of training that is held during the years. How do you evaluate the success of the training through the implementation conducted, if ever there is some implementation of the training taking place? And the next question is directed to both the Department of Public Service and Administration and Department of Employment and Labor, to say, how do you plan to make it easy for people to report social harassment, taking into consideration the saying that people will just say, but will I be retaliated against if I report this matter? And what can I do if it has happened? And here I'm referring to if a person say, what will I be retaliated against? I'm talking about people who lose their jobs on the basis that they have reported a sexual harassment case. What would then be your intervention as both departments should such an occurrence take place? And the last question is based on the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies, to say, how effective is your call to action, men as partners and boys to stand against rape and sexual abuse of women and children, since the statistics of rape and sexual abuse does not reduce, but rather in some cases result into death, and as if it's not enough, some have had their bodies dismembered. So how can you help in this regard? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tembekwayo. Honorable Siminya.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me join honorable members to welcome the presentation. And I'm partly covered by some of the questions. Just two questions. On communication, I heard the presenter as he was presenting on the empowerment, and he was saying that they are still waiting for the legislation of 40% to be whether adopted, if I've heard them well. And just to say, my understanding is that the president State of the Nation address, it's a policy on its own, which needed to be implemented without waiting for another legislation. If I had a well, can just clarify me on that. The second issue is that majority of the department that they've presented here, they've talked about mainstreaming gender in their department. Just to understand at what level is their focal persons are positioned in the department. Lastly, on SABC, what is it being done on the adverts that promote insubordination of women, which in my own view promote violence against women? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Siminya, Honorable Hewa. Mahlengwa,
Yes.
over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. First of all, let me greet all our steering committee as well as the panel we have there. And let me follow the suits to welcome the presentation they have given to us, although the time was so limiting us, but the presentation was so fruitful. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mine is not a question as such, but there is a comment and a clarity seeking. First of all, I'm looking at pillar 1 in the women, youth, and person with disability department. I'm worried, a little bit worried about the pillar 1 because we are about to finish the month, the Women's Month. To our disappointment, several women were killed this month. Some of them were highly pregnant, but only to find that the perpetrators said, what is 15 years after all in jail? I'm going to jail in 15 years, and then after all, I came back and start where I left. That is worrying our women outside. Secondly, I'm not convinced about the advocacy, but let us call all the police stations to come on board and help women. We also need the detailed report on gender-based violence and femicides. Let us call all the stakeholders, such as Amakhosi. Mina nje I'm from KZN, kukhona amakhosi, khona izinduna, khona abafundisi, nakwezindawo, nakwamanye ama-province. Let us call all those who are in authority in the community to give them this advocacy or this awareness. Because when we see this awareness, we are talking about accountability, coordinating, and displaying of leadership. How do you instill this belief of accountability? In which way do you instill this belief of accountability? Because now women of South Africa are crying almost daily. We need action, but not words. Now we need action. Enough is enough. Our children, our daughters, they've been killed by someone who said, I love you. Let us come on board and have action. Come to justice. Yes, I need clarity on advocacy or awareness or education. First of all, let me, Chairperson, set my disappointment because there is no education. Because education have a huge number of boys, huge number of girls who need to be shaped so that they are grown up as good citizens. I plead to you, Chairperson, to please invite the Department of Education so that the department will instill this belief and say and implement some
curriculum guidance to bring this boy child and girl child. Because in the schools, there are ECD crash. They are bullying. There is a bullying there up to the high school level. We need something curriculum to shape our boy and girl child. In our days, there are girl guides and there are scouting. Let us bring those. And in our own cultures, as we are here, we have our cultures. Let us bring those cultures to mold our children so that they will grow up as a good citizen and responsible citizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mafengwa. Thank you very much, honorable members, for all the questions and the contributions. Going back to the department, I believe that you were writing down all the questions in order to respond to them. But let me do it like this. I'll call upon the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability to respond to all the questions that has been raised by all honorable members. Let me say 5 honorable members because the 6th one was Honorable Ndaba, who said they are going to call all the department to come and present to the portfolio committee as the chairperson of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. So all the department, when you respond, please respond to all the questions that has been raised by different honorable members. Thank you very much. Department of Women, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if the minister would like to say something first, or can we respond?
You can respond, DG.
Thank you. Most of the time, it was the network was kicking me out, so I didn't get all the questions. However, DDG Shoki and Me Esther Maluleke will respond to all the questions. DDG Shoki and Esther.
Thank you, DG. Let me start by responding to the issue of the cabinet resolution to absorb the social workers. As a department, we are not responsible for the absorption of the social workers per se. This is in the purview of the Department of Social Development and to follow through with all the other government departments like your health department, your SAPS, where social workers have a role to play in terms of the work that they ought to do. Having said that, I will then take it back to the department to follow up or with them whether they have managed to persuade the various government departments to do so. I do know that at national level and provinces within DSD, they managed to absorb the social workers within their baseline and they reprioritize to the best of their ability up till a point where they could no longer absorb them because that also has to do with the finances. But as to whether the other government departments managed to do so, it's a matter that can be better responded to by the Department of Social Development. And on the issue of IRAP, we have a report, the IRAP report is available. We've been reporting to the Portfolio Committee of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities at that time around the implementation of IRAP and the challenges that we were experiencing. However, we did make a plea to the committee, and which is a plea I would like to make even today, that we are now focusing on the National Strategic Plan in terms of implementation. The IRAP had its own era at that time, and on those deliverables that we could not deliver on or implement, we have actually infused into the current National Strategic Plan and it has found its strategic path into the Mne framework that we are finalizing. So I would really convince members and say, IRAP, all is not lost with it. Where we did not implement, it is catered for in the National Strategic Plan, because we did note that there were things that we were supposed to deliver on. In relation to the comment, Mama, I don't think one has to even respond to what you have said. You were making a plea. You actually made a call to heighten action. And we do believe that that is the route or the path we need to pursue as a Department of Women in partnership with particularly members of the criminal justice system, as well as civil society, in creating or heightening awareness in an effort to deal with issues of prevention. But having spoken to the issue of a call to action, now that we are working on the prevention strategy, as soon as that strategy is concluded, finalized, and adopted or endorsed, this is the strategy that is going to be implemented by all. And when I mean by all, it's from the workplace to the private and public spaces, by civil society, by everyone, beginning with every individual who is supposed to take charge, to families, to societies and communities and everybody else. So with all of that, Mama, I do believe that we can begin to do something, because it will span across even the education sector that you made reference to, addressing all the issues around curriculum. And I know there is work underway, but also making sure that we work very hard with men. The more we leave them behind, the more we leave a critical stakeholder. There are good men out there, and they must come out to the fore and say, not in my name, but they must really make sure that they deal with those that are not doing things the right way, by bringing them to those social groups and help them in transforming gender relations. I'm also going to ask my colleague here, Upraise, to comment on the issue around the jail sentencing in relation to even the bills that they have come up with, what they seek to achieve in all of this. The last one is around the issue of the social auxiliary workers as well. I would probably, if there's no one to respond to it, because I wasn't sure who it was directed to, but because the social workers was directed to us, I would also indicate that it's also a matter that is in the purview of the Department of Social Development. I wouldn't necessarily know as a Department of Women as to what prompted them to enter into those contracts. But again, when you have a contract, I'm talking in generic terms, it is premised on a particular period, and when it ends, and it is also informed by availability of budgets. When you enter into that contract, they inform you from the onset that it is a contract post. You're starting at this particular period, in the next X amount of months, the contract is ending. So it's not like one is taken aback at the point when the contract ends. However, we would wish to see these young people being constantly employed, because there's huge unemployment, but at the same time, I cannot convincingly say they will still be re-employed as social auxiliary workers, because I don't know what prompted them to be employed and what prompted the termination of those contracts. The last one was on directed to communications on the GBV Command Center. I think together with the communications and social development, we will engage on this matter and see how do we reach out to even SABC and make sure that the suggestion that the command center number be constantly depicted on the screen. But the rest, we will still take it back to the Department of Social Development to look at how do they strengthen their awareness campaigns around popularizing the GBV Command Center. Madam Esther, I'm going to request that you also come in and respond to the website issue. For now, that's it that I can think of in terms of questions that were posed to the Department of Women. Esther, please come in.
Thank you, DDG. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, am I audible? Okay. Thank you,
Yes,
and thanks, Chairperson. I'll respond to the question on the website. This website, it's fairly new. It was developed and established working together with Department of Women. It's a website for the collaborative platform that we've been talking about, which is constituted by government departments, civil society organizations, and the private sector. It is working, and that's where we are trying hard to deposit information, any information related to gender-based violence. And we have shared the website address with members, and we would really want to plead that you popularize the website. Yes, it's accessible. If you go into the website, so far you will see all the work that the collaborative platform has been doing. We have two challenges at the moment. As I said, it's fairly new, and we are looking for content. We want, and it's not limited just to government. Key stakeholders, like committees in parliament, civil society organizations, and the private sector. Everybody has a right to access that website, but also to share information in terms of the work that they are doing on gender-based violence. But we also went beyond just having the website. Now we have, and that's why we shared that slide, we have established the social media platforms, you know, your Facebook, because we want to start interacting with South Africans on issues of gender-based violence as implementers of the NSP. And we just released the first newsletter. Again, you will find that newsletter. If you go into the website, you will see our first newsletter that we've released. And we are doing all this because we're trying to really get information out there to create a platform where we can begin to communicate the work that is done in terms of gender-based violence beyond the reports that we are releasing. I hope I've responded to the question. I think the other thing that I need to bring to the attention of members is that because this is new, we don't have, right now what we're trying to do is to really partner with anybody, whether it's the GBV private sector fund or any other funder, to see if we can get somebody full-time. That is our challenge now. Who can help us manage, especially the social media platforms. As you know, we need to, you know, in real time, feed those platforms in terms of information, so that if somebody goes into, sends a WhatsApp or sends a message on Facebook, there's somebody the other side who's able to respond and respond very quickly. So that is what we are trying to do now, to find somebody who can manage this, because we don't have sufficient funds to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's all from the department.
Justice and Correctional Services, please. Can you
Thanks.
respond to the questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I can just respond. Dr. Tembakwayo's question on the social auxiliary workers was directed to us. Unfortunately, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Service had asked me to attend on his behalf. This is a correctional services matter, and the officials that are here are from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, so there's nobody here from Correctional Services, and I'm the Deputy Minister for Justice and Constitutional Development. So I'm not able to answer. I would suggest if Dr. Tembakwayo is feeling she's not getting an answer, I mean, she could table it as a parliamentary question to the minister. There was also a question raised on the women in senior positions in the department, again for justice and constitutional development. The target for women in the SMS, I think that's a senior management service, is 50%. And from the July statistics, the actual percentage is 47%, which is just 3% less. We also have a target of 2.3 people for people with disabilities, and the actual achieved is 2%, so 2% out of 2.3, so 0.3% less. If I can then just ask Advocate Kambule to respond on the issue of public education and advocacy that Honorable Hlengwa asked.
Thank you, DM. I would like just to say that first, that the Department of Basic Education is the member of the two committees that are mentioned, the Directors General Intersectoral Committee on Sexual Offences, and also the other one, which is on child justice. So they are participating in that platform and also providing quarterly reports for monitoring purposes. I would like then to say that the department also considers, actually has been concerned about the serious and the violent crimes that are perpetrated by children. We collect statistics that is on child justice, that is disaggregated, and in terms of the age groups and so on. And we have found in 3 consecutive financial years that children are committing mostly sexual offenses. And for the previous financial year, that is 2020 to 2021, we have found that on the top 3 offenses that children have been charged with, first is rape, and rape is the most serious a sex crime amongst the family of the sexual offenses because it involves the full penetration. And then secondly, the second offense is assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. And then you have the third, which is murder. So those are the top 3 crimes. And for us then to sort of contain them and assist the Department of Basic Education, we partnered with them. So we have been, we started a schools campaign, and this is 3 years ago. And it's only just that last year we did not, for the reasons of the COVID-19 restrictions. So, but I can give you the figures for the 2019-2020 public schools campaign that we conducted. We visited 310 schools, and we reached 69,810 children. And in this financial year, we have also conducted 2 webinars which were focusing on learners. We invited schools to participate, and it was on the first, it was on online child exploitation and cyberbullying, and it was held on the 15th of July. And the second one, it was on the same topic, that was held on the 29th of July. And now we're moving on so as to sensitize them on the issues of the National Register for Sex Offenders, and also the legislation on sexual offenses. And because for us, it is quite a serious concern for us to have children committing rape, not any other form, as a top crime, and the top crime that they have been charged with. So basically that is that. And now coming then to the issue then of the crimes, and but I will be reporting in terms of the NPA. You know, the issue of sentencing, it's something that we need to reconsider in our country. And I know that women were marching and saying that they want serious sentences to be imposed. But then all of that, they do have the ramifications. as to are they really effective? That's the first question. And what are the ramifications of those long imprisonment sentences on the government's purse? So those are the issues that we need then to deliberate on. But what I can say is that the NPA reported that they have a conviction rate of 74% on sexual offenses, and also then they also have I'm trying to get to this chapter, chairperson, and they have also have reported then on the imprisonment sentences and life sentences that they have imposed, that the courts have imposed in these cases. So, but as I say, that it is one issue that we really need to have a serious deliberation as a country as to whether is that sentence impactful, you know, the imprisonment sentence. So I managed to get it. So what they are saying here, that is the NPA, is that the life sentences that were imposed in 2019, 2020, it was 267, and 154 sentences between 20 to 25 years imprisonment, and so on. So our courts are responding to the call that was made by women when they marched in 2018. And we have been seeing an escalation of that number. More and more life imprisonment sentences are imposed in these cases. But as I said, that it's a matter that we really need to look in terms of its impactfulness of the sentence. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the response up to so far. Honorable members, it's 9:15 now. And the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the department, I would just want to propose, because as a steering committee, we still have something to do after listening to your responses. Can we utilize 30 minutes in responding to the questions? The answers that has been raised by one department, please, the other department that will come after, don't repeat the questions or the answers that has been given already. Can we proceed to public service and administration?
Thank you, Chairperson. Can I give DG the opportunity to respond? DG Yoliso?
Yes, yes, madam.
Thank you, TM, and thank you, Chairperson. There's a few questions that have been asked to DPSA. The first one related to what can be done differently to encourage reporting. And I think I did indicate earlier on in my presentation, the section after the planned interventions, I highlighted some of the things that we're looking at, including exploring technology capability that would allow, it seems that there is a need to centralize reporting in terms of these cases. So there's some work that's taking place there. In terms of what are the things that we are doing, we are also part of FOSAT, the Forum for South African DGs. And so we present our reports to the DGs directly in FOSAT. We are also, we've done provincial visits. I've engaged about 7 of the 9 provinces in the issue of gender-based violence and sexual harassment, how we handle it in the public service has been part of the engagements that we've had with them. These are part of the issues. We will update the presentation. We take the feedback that we needed to align the interventions directly or directly with the challenges. Where we say there's challenges, we take that feedback, we will improve on that. Then there was the question around planned interventions. Okay, I've already answered that one. Then there's the issue around training. Our plan has been to go back to some of the colleagues as a sample, some of the colleagues who have gone through training at the School of Government, and be able to get feedback from them in terms of the impact of the training. We can only know the impact through their feedback. And part of the survey I spoke about earlier on, we would integrate those type of questions. In terms of the other question was, what would be our intervention should someone lose a job due to reporting a case? In terms of the existing laws, that should not happen. But if it were to happen and it were to be reported, we would certainly ensure that it is investigated, the allegation, and the matter is given attention and resolved. We get lots of complaints about a number of things at DPSA, and we process them accordingly until the matter is resolved. We also have a hotline that deals with a number of issues, especially around employees who are suspended. Then the issue about the GBV number, I think what we can, there's opportunities in the public service to really prioritize and advertise the number, the GBV Command Center number. I think that we could engage with GCIS, and we could, through our circulars and communication that we have with departments, we could ensure that we add that information for the department so that it can be continuously the information that's in the face of people in the public service. The last question, the last issues for me would have been, there was a question around women in SMS. The latest report I can remember now, the national report we have done gives us, I think it's an end of the financial year report, gives us the number at 43%. I think it's 44, it can be rounded to 44, it's 43.77% of women. So we are not, as the public service, we're not on target and we're not exceeding the target. So we monitor this as well, and we engage with the departments and bring the matter to their attention. Our biggest challenge with non-compliance by departments on issues that we are responsible for as the department is that we can only monitor, raise the issue with you when you are not qualified, when you are not complying, report to Parliament through our committee, as well as report to Cabinet. There's nothing else. We can't force the colleagues beyond those measures in place that are provided by our legislation currently. So we have a limitation in terms of that. I think that the idea that we must present the framework and there must be engagement with the committee responsible for women and for women, youth and children, for youth, women and people with disabilities. We welcome that opportunity. We would certainly be able to present as the department. I think that's all from my part as TPSA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Cooperative governance.
Good evening, Chairperson. I must be honest in saying that I've had a huge challenge with my network. I'm not so sure if I'm audible, but I didn't necessarily pick up on all the questions, Chair, and I must apologize.
Okay, you may respond to the ones that you had, and later the secretary will send the questions and you respond to them. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Chairperson. I must say that I was not able to hear any of the questions, Chair. I was completely dropped and I had to come back in for the department. My apologies.
Honorable members, can we leave cooperative governance and go to employment and labor?
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. I think there was only one question, I think, Honorable Chairperson, if I captured correctly, from Honorable Dr. Tembekwayo, with regards what is it that we do with those who are victimized or are victims of harassment and or sexual harassment at the workplace, and to an extent that they find themselves having been either by now being outside of the system, having been due to this occurrence of. I think in my presentation, we are indicating the fact that I think in terms of our Employment Equity Act Section 6 and in terms of the code of practice, of good practice, we make a point, honorable members, that actually employers, it is the employer's responsibility to protect victims. Actually, they must be protected. And I think our current advocacy campaigns or programs, we must agree that they might be inadequate to deal with the issues. And I think we need to do more. But currently, we do have CCMA, which assist with these matters of sexual harassment and harassment cases. And I think, as I've alluded to, that Section 10 of the Employment Equity Act also empowers the labor courts and CCMA to deal with such issues and actually to enforce and give an award to what should happen in terms of whether the perpetrator should be like dismissed and something like that if a victim has been unfairly dismissed, like they would do. Obviously the perpetrators will victimize you to an extent that you either quit or they fire you, you get fired for no apparent reason. So such perpetrators, I think it is covered, but also I think we need to do more advocacy and begin to actually educate our employees and workers in terms of their rights and more so if there might be many people out there in the streets who might have lost their jobs because of this. We still encourage them to, those who are able to go through to CCMA, to still report their cases, to say, and those who will be able to justify the fact that I've been victimized and I was left outside and I'm still outside. So we need to do more advocacy on that, but also we need to encourage our people, our workers and employees to report such cases. If you are unable to report it to your immediate employer, we need to at least give them this other window to go and report such cases through to law enforcement agencies like the police, and to indicate. I recently, Chair, if you allow me to digress a bit, received a complaint from a lady who works for another department who has been through a case of sexual harassment for many years, to the extent that this woman was pregnant and she got stillborn, not a stillborn, what? No, she gave birth prematurely at 7 months, because this supervisor will force this woman while pregnant to remove like some equipment from the office to another office. When that job has somebody who is responsible for such, she will do that. After that, this same pervert will say, take them back from where you took them. That kind of a situation. This woman is so affected to the extent that she is so sick, and the perpetrator is not even a first-time offender for that matter within our government. So we need to do more advocacy, and we need also to say, go to the police. If you think that our system is too slow for you, go to the police. But I think we need to also educate our relevant people in the in HR and in such units about the rights of the victims, and to also push the narrative that the employer is responsible to actually protect the victim at all costs against the like I like the saying of the Women's League that we support the victim. If a victim comes and say, I've been raped, we must always be on the side of the victim. So I think that as employers, we need to be on the side of victims, and we need to push this narrative. And I think I also support the matter that was raised by Honorable, I think is Honorable Shira, is it Sharif, earlier on, who talks about the fact that we need to do more on communication in terms of the hotline that needs to be supported. And I think all the departments, it shouldn't just be a hotline of the Department of Women and Youth and People with Disability in the presidency. So it should be for all other departments. I think we need to pursue that and advocate and make it known to all our employees and everywhere else. So, but also I want to say, and because we are new in these sessions as deputy ministers, for instance, and I don't know how often is such sessions taking place, but I think such sessions should be taking place on a quarterly basis so that we don't have to wait for long or for a year to get this feedback on the outcomes and as to what is the feedback. I think this committee is doing a good job, and therefore its work must work from time to time and interact more often just to get feedback. I think the cases, the number of cases as alluded to, I realized that they were too little, but the abuse and bullying and harassment and sexual harassment is more happening in the departments, in the workplace. And I think there must have been more cases that must come to the surface, but the victims, because they are afraid, as Dr. Tembekwayo has said, that the victims are not safe. They don't feel safe to report some of the cases. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. Chair, you are muted.
Communications, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will be very brief as some of the comments or questions have been responded to. So as the Department of Women indicated that we will work with the SABC with regards to ensuring that we include the command center number on the platform. Chair, I was hoping that the Department of Women would also talk about the policy on the SETA side, because I think we've faced some difficulties in terms of, as I indicated, on implementing it. And this requires that we'll have to change then the procurement legislation at National Treasury. Chair, with regards to the question by Honorable Sharif on the tools to use that we can use to hold the transgressors accountable or prosecute. As I indicated in the presentation, we're amending the FPB Act to include criminalization on revenge porn.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Ndaba.
Chair, I think Ms. Jani, she mentioned something in relations to regarding the 40% procurement that was announced by the president.
Yes.
And she says they are experiencing some problems, of which she thought that maybe the Department of Women was going to talk to that, was going to talk to it. But now, what is our interest or our concern is, can she share with us the challenges that they are faced with regarding that? So that you see, the Department of Women is reporting some of the challenges to us as the portfolio committee, but we'll like to hear from her on what are the challenges that they are faced with regarding that, rather than just highlighting or mentioning it and passing it without giving us the detail on what exactly is she talking about. So can she share with us, Chairperson, so that we can know exactly, because I know the Department of Women in some of the issues they do raise with us. So we want to hear from her.
DG, can you
Thank
share
you.
with us the challenges?
Yes, I will. Thank you, and thank you to Honorable Ndaba. What we were saying, Chair, and I thought I was alluding to it, and is that we need to change the procurement bill, which the National Treasury has. In our engagements with them, I don't think that this matter is receiving the necessary attention. Now, we can't go and enforce it or implement this if then the procurement bill doesn't change, to be very deliberate and distinct to say they should be 40% set aside. As I indicated that CETA had made a commitment, but it's not prescribed in law, honorable members. So until such time that we can fast track the amendments and ensure that it is actually then compulsory, it is therefore difficult in terms of the implementation. I hope then I was clear, Chair, to Honorable Ndaba.
Okay.
May I proceed, Chair?
Yes, DG, you were responding to all of us, not only to Honorable Ndaba, but to the steering committee.
To the steering committee, my apologies. I hope I was clear. Honorable Sharif asked with regards to this particular issue on how then do we prosecute. As I indicated that we are in the process of amending, finalizing actually the amendments to the legislation to criminalize revenge pornography. But over and above that, because we know that the process of legislation takes long, the FPB continues to work with SAPS, the Family and Child Protection Unit, and they do report then these incidents. We also do list them on the website as well in terms of the public, in terms of the name and shame that we do, Chair. And then with regards to the SABC adverts that are very subjective or demeaning to women, Chair, I just wanted to indicate that we will bring this matter up to SABC, but because of the editorial independence, it is also important for members of the society to report this because they prescribe to a code of conduct that is regulated by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission as well as ICASA. So if then matters are not being addressed or feel that they're not adequately addressed by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, then the next layer is to escalate it to ICASA as well as to the courts. But we are quite aware and we will raise then this matter. We will raise the matter with SABC to sensitize them. With regards to SAPO, as well as the vetting, this process is ongoing in terms of vetting. Unfortunately, what we started off was that we were seeking vetting through SSA, but they don't have the capacity or they've been inundated with other pressing needs. So they've actually had gone out with a private service provider to do that. So that is still underway in terms of the vetting. Thank you, Chair. I hope I've answered all the questions.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, is there any other questions that we need to raise before I release all the departments?
Yeah, Chair.
Yes.
Semenya, I've asked the question of I want to make follow up on this matter. My question was, if the president's pronouncement, is it not taken as a policy requirement that should be implemented? Do we have to wait for another legislation? Because there are a lot of pronouncement that president is doing and they get implemented, and why with respect to 40%, it's said to wait for the legislation. And Chair, I would propose that Department of Women must take this matter up because I don't agree with communication.
Are you done, Ms. Honorable Sminya?
Yes, Chair, and I've asked the issue of the focal persons. How, at what level of the department they can send the answer to Mandy in writing? At what level? Yes. Are they their focal person? Are they in all the department that they've presented? They can send that in writing to Mandy. Thanks.
Thank you very much for
Chairperson. Chair.
Honorable Ndaba.
What I want, it's just a clarity. Is Honorable Smenya, in terms of the levels, is she talking about salary levels?
The position, whether are they at managerial post, at what level, whether DDG or deputy director, at what level are they in a position to make sure that there is gender mainstreaming in the department?
Yes, DM.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just to actually also support the question that Honorable Siminya is asking. I think it's a question that has actually been long-standing, that has got to do with not only the level per se. She has always been worried about just the gender focal points across government. That has got to do with the mainstreaming that needs to be taking place across board. I think it's something that needs to be looked at by the steering committee, interrogated, and then maybe at the later stage, looking at what the departments are actually doing on it. And ourselves as departments, we need to actually go back to the drawing board in terms of the focal points, because the one worry is the kind of attention that these focal points are actually getting across government. And if they are not actually properly structured, what it means is what is always said is that whatever we say that has got to do with women as Women's Caucus will just be talk show, just to be sure that we galvanize mainstreaming of issues of women. This is something that needs to be closely looked at, including the whole issue of resuscitation of the national gender machinery. Because if we actually proceed with this style, just coming to the caucus, and then you find that we don't look at globally what is it that is our machinery, our national gender machinery. You find that other players are actually, an important players per se, are actually left out when matters of this nature are actually interrogated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DM. Honorable members, can I release the department for now?
Thank you, Chair. You can release the departments. We'll engage the departments when we invite them.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you. Honorable members.
Go well.
Thank you, Chair. I assume that
Good night.
Deputy Minister Kana, I sebenzisa ngoba i-Department of Women iwenzile lo msebenzi.
Unusual man, we just need to pull everything together that has been done.
Fanele niyithole lo report, i-Department of Women iyenzile that analysis.
Yenzile umsebenzi, yebo.
Yeah.
Akunandaba, i-report fanele ibe khona sibe satisfied.
Yeah. All right, thank you. And how are you, Siswam?
Fine, sisi. Ithi ngingamoshi isikhathi, angisho u-chairperson usaqhubeka
Oh, sorry, go to Valley.
Okay, bye.
Honorable members.
Yes,
we
Chairperson.
still have two, if not 3 items on the agenda. The issue of the 27th of August, Women's Parliament preparatory briefing. I thought Honorable Lucas will be part of this meeting in order to brief us about the whole issue. I don't know if the whip can take us through. Honorable Nkomo.
Sorry, Chairperson, I just quickly went to the bathroom. I did not hear. Sorry,
Hey, you are
My apologies on a behalf. Can you take us through?
Oh, okay. For a program, okay.
Yeah, the program of Women's Parliament.
Okay. My humble apologies and good evening, honorable members. This is the proposed program that was drafted by the Office of the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, because the approach of this year's Women's Parliament is that because we've been having many Women's Parliament in the previous terms, but there has been discussions only. So this year then we decided that let's take the resolutions of the 2019 Women's Parliament and this Parliament of 2021, we convene it as a feedback or a response, a session where departments, based on the issues that we raised, departments will come and respond on since from 2019 until today, the work that has been done. So the program, as you can see, you can go up a bit, as you can see, from the first session yes, which speaks about reflecting of 2020 Women's Parliament undertaking and implementing. So we'd have Minister of Women who will respond on the issues raised here, and we'll have also Minister Mantashe also giving a feedback on the issues that we raised on the Women's Parliament. And you can go up a bit. We'll have also the Minister Patel also responding on the issues that we also raised, and also Minister Ngwesi also responding on the issues raised. And then after that, we'll have just go down a bit. Go down a bit. We'll have an interaction discussion. And the second session will then give the premiers of all provinces to also give their inputs on issues that which relates to women in their own provinces. And we can go up. All 9 provinces, all premiers will be present. And then there would be the fourth session, which will be chaired by the chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, where all the political parties in Parliament will give messages of support. And then Honorable Sinoli will then give us the resolutions and the way forward. So there's the proposal for our Women's Parliament this year, which we decided that let it be done differently like the normal one, but rather let's have a feedback and taking of the resolutions and decisions that were taken on that Women's Parliament of 2019. Yeah, I think, Chair, I was able to cover all the proposed program as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Whip. You are so progressive. Honorable members, this is the proposal. Can we have a bite on it? I can see the hand of Honorable Sharif.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let me first welcome the change in process. I think that the Women's Parliament should be run this way in terms of giving a report back on what departments have been doing, because, you know, it's always an issue of this is just a talk shop. So I think this then does, you know, try and counter that to say this is more of feedback or a report back meeting. Chair, I just want to, you know, perhaps give a recommendation that the report back by departments and ministers and deputy ministers, Chairperson, it really honestly must look at targets, what targets have been met, what targets have not been met, how are we monitoring the implementation, as well as the budget allocations and how has that been spending. Because, you know, the fact that in government we just speak so much, but we don't have any real points is becoming tiresome, Chair. And so when we do these presentations, it must be to the point. This is what we're doing. This is the challenges. These are the interventions. This is the risk mitigation strategy. This is where we're going. So that would be my input, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sharif, for your input. Honorable Ndaba.
Thanks, Chair. So, Honorable, I want to ask Honorable Sharif on what she just said now, Chair. Is she saying we should maybe write to especially to the ministers of the departments on what are the expectations, so that when they come and report back on Friday, they should include the things that she just mentioned now, or what? Is she saying that? If
Yes.
she's saying that, then what we can do is that the secretary of the committee can then write to the ministers and indicate on other things that we'll be expecting from them when they are reporting back on that day, on Friday. So it's something that needs to be done as soon as possible, so that ministers, they can include the things that you just said now. And I think that one is progressive, because we'll know exactly, so that we know they don't come and report and then they don't even indicate or mention what are the challenges, what are the shortcomings, and what are the other things, good things that they have done as departments. I'm sure that one I support it. So what we are proposing is that the secretary maybe need to write those things tomorrow, so that the ministers should include them on their speech on Friday. But in terms of the program, I think I'm supporting the program the way it is. But you know, last, if I'm not mistaken, we were including members of the opposition, especially, I think it was the DA. Is it last year, Chairperson, Women's Parliament, or last year's Women's Parliament? 2019, where we included members of the opposition to co-chair the sessions. So I think that also we need to do it so that, you know, it's a multi-party women's parliament. It's a women's parliament. So that reflects all parties that are in parliament. And also it was a good thing that we did in 2019. So I'm sure, Chair, this year I've missed it even myself. I'm sorry that I'm raising it now, but I think it's proper that we need to include them in our program to co-chair, because it's a multi-party women caucus. So next time I think we need to include it. We need to include them, but I support the program.
Signori Signori on the program, if I may ask.
Yeah, can't we put them, Chair? We need to put the opposition, I think, so that it will have it reflected right. Let's see how to adjust and put them. The DA, the EFF. Last time we put Chair, the DA and the EFF, or did we really say I forgot?
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
Chairperson, through you.
Yeah.
Chair.
Let me take Honorable Tembekoyo before I come to you.
Is it my turn now, Chairperson?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I would say the program as it is, I definitely support it because it's taking a different scenario altogether. But my question is, who was planning this? Because it's Wednesday today, and we want to bring some changes in the contents, the prepared contents of what is supposed to be presented on Friday. When do we expect the departments and the provinces and so on to adjust their own preparations towards our needs? I think we would be very much unfair. And I believe the ministers or whoever will be coming to talk to us on resolutions. Obviously, they will never forget to tell us what is that was expected of them, how much they have done, and so on and so on. I believe it's an obvious matter for them to do that. But to say they must change their contents, it's very much unfair. And I believe that in future, when we plan such meetings of a high magnitude, we can't just decide to say the other people and this one should come on board. It's only a day's difference, hey? So let's keep that in mind. It's unlike when you have the whole week or we have the whole month to make changes into the program as it is here. But I definitely feel it's a different direction and it's a new one, and it's very much appreciated and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Siminya.
Chair,
No, Chair.
Because
Chairperson, I recognize. I think I want to agree with Dr. Tembekoyo, because this is not our program as multi-party. It's a program of the parliament, which is organized by the deputy chairperson and the deputy speaker of parliament as they do it annually. As multi-party, we've been requesting that we should be taken on board in preparations, but we've not reached that level. So to change the program now, I agree with the Tembekoyo. It's not going to work because it's not even our program. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Lava.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think honorable members, they must not forget this, that this is a steering committee meeting. And in a steering committee meeting, we will raise issues that are pertinent, because it's not correct that Honorable Tembekwayo, you are saying it is wrong to put in other opposition parties in the program.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah,
I'm-
but
I-
what
I'm
was
not saying- I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying the time for putting some
the
changes
time.
into
Okay.
the program.
No, if
I'm
we are
only
saying that.
complaining about the time, but
Oh,
we have
okay.
had such women parliament before, and then
Yeah.
we were also involved in it, in the
Yeah.
co-chairing, and it went beautifully so.
Okay.
But yes, I'm
Not
just talking
this,
about
but
the
we are
time. But
saying
if
this
you
time
feel-
it's
if
late.
you feel it has to be, then it's fine, no problem.
No, I was just raising it, that it looked good in 2019, the way we prepared it.
Yes, I agree with you.
And
yes.
all of us, it motivates other honorable members ukuthi bafeel bathathe ownership and feel ukuthi they belong,
True, of course.
so it's important. And Rosina, Honorable Simeni, this program, if ever yaga deputy chair was the NCOP, nega deputy speaker, so why are we discussing it? So why should we discuss the program, Chair, if it's not our program? So we're just wasting our time.
We're being
Honorable
briefed,
Leader.
not discussed.
Yeah, but-
We're
so
being
it's not
briefed,
correct.
not-
But it's not correct, because I will want. I wouldn't want to come in a meeting whereby ngizotshelwa bese ngiyahamba ngithi kulungile. No ways.
100% Honorable Ndaba. I absolutely agree with you.
And then secondly, Honorable Tembekwayo, what we are saying, we're not changing the what the ministers have prepared. All what we are saying is to request that in their speech, because obviously they are reporting back, maybe it will be better also to send things that are expected from them, so that when they look at their speech, they put, we must not think that maybe what we are thinking, our expectation is obvious, but it's better when you at least send something to people so that they can look at their speeches and see if they do have those reports in the department.
But why were you not included in the planning, firstly? Only to be
That is
included
a
the day
question for the
before.
NCOP on why they did not include us.
Only to be included the day before. People no.
Chairperson, it's fine. It's fine. If we are saying no, it's fine.
I'm new, but I'm very argumentative.
If we are saying Tembekwayo, we are not going to be we are not being unfair. Madam Chair, I need to be protected
Chair.
because I'm on the platform.
Yes.
Yes, Tembekwayo, please, man.
You have raised your issues.
Yes.
But
So, Chair,
honorable members, we must understand the program is here. And when it has been presented, we said it's a proposal, bearing in mind the issue of time. But
Yes.
what we need to understand is that us as the steering committee, we also have a way of raising issues. And by saying that the department should include, we are not so sure whether the department didn't include it or not.
Yes.
But Honorable Sharif was raising it that if it's not there, it will be good if they can include the issue of target. But for now, we cannot say the department hasn't also put the issue of targets on their report, because we haven't seen the report. Let's agree that the secretary will send the information to the relevant department to say, let them include this. If it's already there, it means they're not going to change anything, or they're not going to make any alterations, because it will be there. Because by the virtue of things, they were supposed to include it, even if we didn't ask them to do so. The other issue of co-chairing, I don't think also that one is an issue. We have to talk to the deputy chief whip and the deputy chairperson and the deputy speaker and the deputy chairperson to say, there was this proposal since we have seen the 2019 program, that it was good. It was embracing all members, or it was embracing a lot of political parties. So we felt as the steering committee that if it can be done this way, it will be fine.
Yeah.
Because
agreed, Chair. Agreed.
Alteration by putting a name and taking out one, I don't think it's a problem.
Agreed.
But I'm
Chair.
happy because as the steering committee, we are all supporting this idea.
Yes.
So we don't have to argue about this, honorable members. I believe that at the end of the day, some of the issues that we are talking about now, we'll see them on the program. Thank you very much.
Amanda, Chair. Don't leave.
Agreed, Chair.
Amanda. Thanks, honorable members. What's the I can see? Outstanding committee business is the adoption of
I see Lizelle's hand is up, Chair.
Come again?
Honorable Van der Merwe.
I think she forgot to lower her hand.
No, my hand was up because I wanted to say, but I'm not going to hold you guys back. It's fine. But I wanted to say 2 points. I think the important point for future women's parliaments are that the steering committee must be involved in the planning much earlier. I think then it will actually eliminate some of the issues that we are discussing now, such as involving the opposition party members to co-chair, as well as making sure that departments are adequately prepared for their presentations. So I think everybody is in agreement. I just think in future, and it's something that we've discussed before, I think as a steering committee, we always sort of an afterthought in the planning of these things, Chairperson, and I really want to make an appeal that in future we are involved, or at least are able to see programs or give our inputs a little bit earlier, because I think Dr. Tembekwayo is quite right. I mean, to be communicating on some of these inputs that we want to give tomorrow, which is 24 hours before the start of Women's Parliament, we can really make a meaningful input if we actually consult it a little bit earlier. But let me not hold everybody back. We are in agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, my Milungu.
Lizelle, how are you?
I'm fine. Mtombi Zulu, Umlungu Mtombi Zulu. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairpersons.
Let's proceed. We're getting there. The minutes of the 4th. Mandy, can you flag the minutes? It's so small, I can't read these things. There we go. Honorable members, if there's something that you want to engage on, you just raise your hand, then we correct as we are moving. Starting with page 1, page 2. Can we move to page 3? Yes. If there's nothing, you proceed, Mne, to the next page. This was the end of the draft minutes of the 4th of June. Any mover? Those who were present, any mover? Mandy, can you assist? Who are the members who attended this meeting on the 4th of June? Honorable Siminya, Honorable Seket, Honorable Nkomo, the DM, Majake, myself, and yeah, I think these are the members who were present on that day. Any mover?
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chairperson.
Thank you, Whip. Any seconder? Honorable Siminya. Honorable Siminya, are you still around or you are off? Honorable Second. Do we still have members here?
We are here, but I don't think the members that need to give you concurrence are here. Maybe we should defer it to the next meeting, Chairperson.
Okay. If members are
where's your whip, Chair? Where's your whip?
My whip
Our
is here.
Chairperson, I'm here.
I'm here,
I moved.
And then where's my whip? It was not part of the meeting.
I don't want to talk about it, but I don't know.
Askis.
Honorable Siminya. It means we'll defer the minutes to the next meeting.
We will have to, Chair.
Sorry?
Chair, I'm saying I agree that we move it to the next meeting, please, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, thank you very much. It was a very long day. Let's call it a night.
Thank you, Chairperson.
The meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Amanda, Chair, good night.
Good night, Ndaba.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
And take care of yourself, honorable members.
Thank you.
I'm very patagahle, Chairperson.
Hello, Mama. How are you? And how is KZN?
How's KZN is all right. Any patagahle, bagit. Hambande manje niyogeza niyolala.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, Mommy. Good night.
Good night. Listen. Okay. Maybe airlines and Jenna, not very much.